Hey everyone, it's Tom here, Alphabetallica, back with a quick introduction for another long-form compilation edition of the show. Today we are looking back on the band's debut. We are looking back on Kill 'Em All. And if you're not familiar with how this works, basically what I've done is I've assembled the 10 episodes where we discuss the 10 songs of Kill 'Em All. I've put them in order. I've topped and tailed them, as it were. I've took off the introduction of the fans and the questions at the end, so it's just me and someone from around the world talking about a song on Kill 'Em All. And just before we get to those and the songs and the thank yous and all that sort of stuff, follow us at Metallica Pod. Of course, get in touch with me if you want to come on the show, if you want to correspond in any way, metallicapod@gmail.com. We've got lots of fun stuff coming up on the show. So by the time this is released, the next episode will be the Glastonbury review, which I've already recorded. That was a fantastic episode where we went through the 2014 headline slot. I'm then working on, probably do a compilation after that. I'm trying to, doing one on, one off, as it were. But then I've got the episode where I'm going to be looking at Metallica's books. That's going to be a solo episode. So I'm just going to kind of, do a compendium, as it were, look back, what was written, what was said. Like, I've read a lot of them, but I don't really remember a lot of them, to be honest. So it's going to be more like, this was written here, here's what Goodreads said and stuff like that. But hopefully that'll interest you, but it certainly does interest me, that sort of stuff. Then the next big episode that I'm going to be working towards is going to be the 30th anniversary show. So I want to do a long-form review, like the guys over at Metallica podcast did ages and ages ago. Like, I remember listening to that episode when I was first getting into them, which is like 3 years ago or so. Shout out Clint and Ethan. So going to be doing that. And then possibly, this is looking further into the future now, but I do want to do another Mega Histories. So you're probably already familiar with the Jason Newsted one we did with Jack, which is like 3 hours or so. So yeah, the next one I'm looking to do would be a Mega Histories. Definitely go back and check out the first one of those I did with Jack on Jason Newsted. It's like pretty much 3 hours of us deep diving the man's past and, his future. So I was thinking, who do I want to cover next? Probably not a band member. Maybe Bob Rock might be interesting to get into, actually. Someone in that realm, just to look at the albums that he's produced before and since Metallica, his work ethic, his style, his indelible fashion. So, that's what the future's looking like. If you do want to hear those episodes before they drop on the main page, of course, you can help support us on Patreon. Thank you to all the people that do and continue to do so. So, today we're going to be looking at the 10 episodes at Kill 'Em All. And huge thanks to everyone that came on the show. So the first song on Kill 'Em All is Hit the Lights. That was episode 68 with Brendan Hill. Then Four Horsemen is next, which is episode 51 with Jason Allen. Jeremy Riley came on for the third song, Motor Breath, which is episode 96. Fourth track is Jump in the Fire, which is episode 76 with Jim Coe. John Moore, good friend of mine, John Moore, came on. That was episode 8, very early episode for Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. Whiplash follows, which is 163 with Rob Zamochki. I hope I'm saying that right, Rob. Phantom Lord follows, episode 111 with Oliver Hamm. Phil Rister was on for No Remorse. That was episode 102. Episode 124 was next with Ivan K. Bacharov. That was, of course, Seek Destroy, the penultimate track. And finally, the closing track is Metal Militia, which is episode 91 with Ralph M. Savetto. So, the reason I say those episode numbers is, well, one, I just want to, again, draw attention to the great contributions by all the people that were on the show. But, go back, because often when you're hearing these clips, you're only hearing half the episode. So if you enjoy the guests, you enjoy the patter, you want some more Alphabetallica in these, ominous lockdown times, hopefully we can brighten a little corner of your day in some way, then go and check them out. But, guys, this is Kill 'Em All, and this is Hit the Lights. Now, as I say, is there. The first one I just received from Cole Johnson today. He says, "Hi Tom, love your podcast. I first got into Metallica when Load came out. I bought Cunning Stunts and heard this song in the Kill Ride melody and thought, what the hell was that? Because I hadn't listened to the back catalogue yet. Later I had some kind of Monster EP and its live version became my favourite of all their songs. This is about Hit the Lights, I should say. I finally went and bought all the back catalogue. I was thrilled to hear it at first. It's just a great fun song. Right now my top 5 are Hit the Lights, Hardwired, Master of Puppets, Spit Out the Bone and All Nightmare Long. Anyway, keep up the great work. Thanks, Cole Johnson in Baytown, Texas. Cole, thank you so much. And yeah, I think, what you're summing up is definitely what we're going to get to. I think most people in their right mind, really regard Hit the Lights as a sort of minor masterpiece to a certain extent. It definitely led to me reevaluating Load recently, and just being like, yo, Kill 'Em All shits on Load, fuck Load, Anesthesia is better than anything. But, I'm not dismissing Until It Sleeps, but there's something about that pure artistry in Anesthesia. I don't know about you. Is Anesthesia better than anything on Load?
No, I don't. No, I'm not bothered with Anesthesia, to be honest with you.
Wow.
It's, I don't really care
Cliff.
that much. Sorry, Cliff. No, it's fine. It's surprising that it's on an album. It's just, it's very arty, and just freeform, and it's fair play to them for putting on a record. I don't think it's, I think it's a guy jamming out. it wouldn't do anything for me, to be honest. So.
It has a lot of shape, though. It has a lot of structure. It's not just jamming.
Oh no, of course it's not jamming, but it's
inspired.
It's fine. But no, I take many tracks off load before that track.
Okay. I'm
so
sure.
I'm in the load camp. I prefer load to
I
the
know.
Black Album. So,
I'm choosing to die on this hill for no reason. Like, I'm just trying to antagonize the listener. So don't take it personally.
I'm all for the antagonism.
And I want to shout out as well, finally, just before we get to the song, Aureline Monroe. I'm saying that definitely wrong in my garbled Brummy tones, but they supported on the Patreon. Thank you so much for that as well. Patreon is there, Alphabetallica. But Hit the Lights. One of the wonderful things about music for me is the sort of time capsule nature, is going on Spotify, discovering a band. Like, I recently got into Black Flag, for example, and being able to go to the most modern stuff, not there is very modern stuff, but going back, to Damaged and, the Greg Ginn instrumentals and, all that sort of stuff. And, we do it here with Metallica. And there's something so brilliant about being aware of the band, like Dr. Manhattan, coexistently as the Hardwired guys, but you can sort of see a bit of them in Hit the Lights, which was very much their debut, the Metal Mania origins. This is a big song for them.
Yeah, no, you can see, I suppose, it popping up on the first track on the last album. Yep. It's kind of a similar kind of straight in there, no messing. It's good crack. It's a bit of fun,
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't take it too seriously.
No. The intro, the sort of trash canning, the false ending, the getting louder around, crashing, and it feels like the end of the show at the start of the album.
Yeah, but I suppose it's kind of an intro track for a show, so it's kind of setting the scene. And I was just watching some live footage from the early days, and they come out, Hetfield doing he's shooting the crowd with his gun, guitar kind of thing. So it's a bit of fun. It's getting the kids ready for action, I suppose. The metal militia.
Yeah. It kind of similar to a certain extent to the end of Cthulhu, that big sort of pomp and, just the way they own it, really, the character that they have, the earned glory. And then it kicks in to the main riff of Hit the Lights, which I love. It's brilliant, don't get me wrong. It's also, Brendan, one of the most generic riffs ever.
Oh, yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's
in a good way.
Nothing major.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's I would have thought, when I heard it first, I thought it was more of a Mustaine kind of guitar thing. It was a bit more wiry.
Yeah. Skin of My Teeth by Megadeth reminds me of it with the pedal point.
Yeah, of course, Hetfield wrote it. And I suppose it's an earlier song from his first band, so God only knows what it sounded like back then. It was probably even more 70s, It's very, it's that song, it's pretty 70s.
Yeah.
It's kind of got that 70s vibe running through it,
Yeah, that Leather Charm, I think that was.
Leather Charm, yes.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
That's where the song comes from. And I think the title was inspired. I think I read this by like a Diamond Head song that's like Shoot Out the Lights or something like that. And, everyone knows what I mean when I say this riff is generic in a good sort of way. It's just chugging on that open A. It's the chords everyone messes about with. It's those kind of, just reliable and, proto-thrash. I listen to a lot of Dokken, and George Lynch kind of has this style as well. Nothing too fancy. And what I love about this song, why I think this song's so brilliant, it features solo guitar, it ends with like almost 2 minutes solo by Kirk, but it has these little breaks, these little interludes.
5-second bursts of...
Yeah. They really invigorate the song.
Yeah, to just give it a toe up the whole, get it ready for the next bit.
It's kind of repetitive and kind of wanky to a certain extent, but it works in this song. And where I love it, where I think, absolutely excels, is the chorus and the way it kind of shifts on its heels, and it becomes head banging and hip shaking at the same time. It's so rhythmic.
Yeah, to get a good groove on. Yeah, the bass is pretty good in it. It's kind of classic rhythm section, kind of bass and drums kind of thing, backing it up. So, no, it's a solid song, definitely.
Yeah, I think I really enjoy it. And Hetfield's voice, though, he screeches a lot, doesn't he?
He does. He's pretty high. I was listening to. Did you listen to the No Life to Leather one, where he's even more? He's more Robert Plant. It's more Robert Plant than James Hetfield, but
soaked in reverb, that original, unbelievable.
Yeah, and he's really the yaz on that are hilarious as well. You gotta love the yaz.
Yeah. But even on this one, it feels like he just hit the lights, like he just has this odd Axl Rose-ish lead singer-ish quality that he would grow into.
Yeah.
But
I suppose he'd yet to grow into his voice. He's still, they're only kids. They're still full of hormones and whatnot. But yeah, it wasn't until Puppets, I suppose, he kind of grew into got a bit more low end going on.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying they're young, and you're right. And I mean, lyrically, the song plays like some sort of bedroom fantasy.
It's the lyrics it's like they're written by a 14-year-old. You know, it's the lyrics are hilarious. You know, it's metal madness and fans screaming, and when you start to rock, we never want to stop again. You know, it's pretty good.
We know our fans are insane.
Yeah, they are insane,
that's like politically, you know what I mean? That's influencing consent.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And what else have we got? We got they're going to rip right through your brain. They got lethal power. Yeah, it'll cause you sweet pain. Oh, sweet pain. So it's it's up there. He did improve over time, you could say.
And the middle riff, which again is nourishingly predictable. It reminds me a lot of Budgie, which Metallica obviously took huge influence on. No. Like, how many fucking bands do that? Like, you know.
Yeah. It just reeks of 70s kind of. It could be any number of 70s bands kind of midsection, you know. Definitely. But it's good fun. And then I suppose it gets a bit heavier to back up the solo. The solo that lasts forever. But
really long. And it's, I don't know, I do like it. Like, I am a bit of a Kirk hater, but I do think it's a pretty good solo. I think it kind of justifies its worth to a certain extent. But it is... I don't know how satisfied these solos have dated, where it's literally, I don't know, there is some shape to it, but not in the overall sculpted.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. There's not much theme running through it, but I suppose it's similar enough to the Mustaine one. You know, let's say there's a bit in it that kind of Holy Wars kind of takes off. You know, there's a bit of Holy Wars solo at the end of it.
Oh man, what a solo.
Yeah, but there's a bit of a climb up on about 3:45 on this solo that I suppose Mustaine took back for his Holy Wars bit, which was a much better solo, let's face it.
Yeah, and I think obviously you compare it to, like, say, the closing solo to Fade to Black and, you know, stuff like that. But it's a time capsule. Like, you know, they've grew as players.
Look, they were only 18, 19, 20 when they wrote this stuff. So, you know, the leaps they had over the next few years was ridiculous. Like, so it was a very good starting point. It's full of energy and it's a bit of fun, you know.
Yeah, and we mentioned before the Metal Massacre, Brian Slagle idea there. 1982, the first pressing contained Metallica as the final song. Obviously, their name was misspelt as well.
A couple of T's in the reserve.
Yeah, there was a few. And I don't know if people are going to be interested in this, but I definitely want to do an episode in the future going through this album, because I've not listened to it, but there's a few bands I know, like Rat is on there. And apparently there's an instrumental called Octave by Avatar, which I want to see. Fighting Backwards by Pandemonium's track 8 as well, so maybe we'll do that. But yeah, that version...
magical.
People need to seek out that version, like, you know, in the same way Beatles fans, you know, want the Quarrymen footage that's horribly recorded from the audio, you know, mix on the day. Like, this is the equivalent for a Metallica fan to see this. You know, this is really our first glimpse of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I actually haven't heard it, so I must check it out.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's pretty magical, Tom.
It is. It is. Hopefully I've sold it. But I do agree, the solo can be a bit elongated. But all in all, the song whizzes by, I feel.
Yeah, it's in and out. It's 4 minutes, which is... It doesn't feel like 4 minutes, to be fair to it. Well, I suppose the intro is 35 seconds. So, you know, an intro and a solo and you're half the song there. So, but it's in and out. It's good fun. It's not something I'd be bothered with. But it's fun.
I quite like the drums to a certain extent as well. Lars apes the riff with the rhythms that, you know, James's guitar sort of guides. And I think he mentioned actually in the Mick Wall book, where when he heard the original recording that I mentioned just before, you know, the producer commented that it wasn't tight enough, and that sort of haunted James, and, you know, that was his ghost, and that's what he worked on. And, you know, you can feel that in the song from there. You just feel secure as a listener. You know, good stuff is coming, and he's playing. It's absolutely sublime. Cliff as well. You can't really hear too much Cliff on this song, really.
No,
it's there, but
I suppose it's sure he didn't. It wasn't involved in writing the song, and it was very similar to the whole thing without it. And it's just more classic. It's more of a classic rock thing, I suppose, really. And it's just classic bass and drums, and it's just he's hitting the notes, he's backing it up, filling it out. But yeah, it's not. He's not doing his Anastasia, whatnot.
No, which
Madness.
I've established, is maybe slightly better than low. But there's big trash canning at the end there's big trash canning at the end as we began. This sort of descending moment.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice sort of symmetrical close to it as well, and almost works on record as an intro to Four Horsemen that it goes straight into.
Yeah, no, bang straight into it. I suppose it runs like a live album, or live setting, it's in, out, into the next song. Don't give them a chance to boo you, let's get on to the next song. Yeah,
it was, it remains for me a standout track from them, something that I really, truly do enjoy. And what warms my heart, Brendan, is that they still play this song on tours. Still, everyone loves it, of course.
Yeah, I don't love it, Tom, to be honest. Right. But yeah, I'd be disappointed if I turned up and I heard this song. But
wow.
There's so many better songs that could be playing. I just find these songs they're taking it easy songs, They're not pushing themselves for these songs. Do you find that, or do you find? It's like when. Sure, you've read various Metallica books. The way they were sick of writing complicated songs after Justice, and they were sick of having heart attacks on stage trying to remember stuff, and they just go for the handier things, But I just find it's a bit juvenile.
I appreciate that, but for me, that nacency is the appeal. I like seeing this sort of raw cut, and I still think as thrash songs, they're really enjoyable within the genre, within the time. Like, I think they've aged quite well. And yeah, I get what you're saying. They're sort of basic cruise control songs, but I don't know. There's a lot of heart behind them. So yeah, I'm quite a big fan of Hit the Lights. I did open it up to @MetallicaPod on the Twitter. This is just recent, just before I went on air. So Alex saying dumbest lyrics written by Metallica, but one of their best songs. Yeah. I think that's
I don't know if you can have the dumbest lyrics ever in one of their best songs. But
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a bit of a juxtaposition, but yeah, okay. No, it's fun. The music is fun. The lyrics are just idiotic,
I think that's fair.
Yeah. We'll have to. Yeah. Okay. Go on.
Let's kick some ass tonight. Definitely.
Let's kick some ass tonight, Tom. Words to live by.
Luke on the Twitter as well. Classic tune, full of energy and thrashy as fuck. Thank you, Luke. Let's see what other people were saying. There's some gifs here of Kirk that I'm whizzing by. If the Metallica story, this is Danny Santana saying, in terms of official albums anyway, begins with Hit the Lights and ends with Spit Out the Bone, I'd say that's one hell of a story.
Yeah. But Spit Out the Bone is brilliant. Yeah. I don't think this is Spit Out the Bone, I think Spit Out the Bone is genuinely brilliant. It's the best thing. Like, if the whole last album was just Spit Out the Bone repeated as just Spit Out the Bone for 12 songs, it would have been ridiculously good. But this song is fine, yeah, Tom. You're not going to get me to say it's brilliant. I know you're pushing.
The Twitter have.
Twitter have, but look, Metallica fans, they're a funny bunch, Let's face it.
So we will close up with a few quick-fire questions. Actually, just before I do, just for you and the fans, just for obviously fans on the website as always, Hit the Lights, been performed 211 times, which is actually a bit fewer than I thought. That kind of shows that it wasn't on a lot of tours. March 14th, 1982 in Anaheim was where they debuted it. Last performed May 7th, 2018, so what's that, like a few months before we recorded this, in Stockholm, Sweden.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they're not going to do it. As you say, it's a kind of cruise control song, which makes sense in the closing encore section that I think it resides, certainly later in the set.
Disappointing, Tom. Disappointing way to go home. If they put in, what else would they put in? I was watching one of the gigs lately, and I think they had this, and they had Nothing Else Matters in the encore, and it was just like, Jesus,
Wow.
Would you be happy with that?
I'd like to see something else rather than Nothing Else Matters, but I do like it as a song.
Yeah, it's a fine song, but
Before I did this show, Kill 'Em All to me as a record in of itself, I didn't quite put it on par with like Ride and Master and Justice, and I still don't to a certain extent. I still think those three records are better than this, but I think altogether I have such respect now for Kill 'Em All. I think as a set of 10 songs, Four Horsemen included, it is a marvel, as you say, that these guys, barely out of their teens, constructed a thrash metal classic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you listen to some of them, and some of them are really kind of straightforward. Like you have a song like Whiplash, which is kind of one thing, breakneck, we're here to kick your ass kind of thing. And then, it almost feels like it doesn't belong in the same band as something like Four Horsemen, because Horsemen kind of gives you a little bit of that epicness that we're going to get with Lightning and with Cthulhu and with Orion, these songs that are multi-movement kind of things, instead of just 4 minutes, motor breath, boom, 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 we're done, and it was great to go back and just kind of relive that kind of vibrance with them. And there's a real garagey kind of vibe to it too.
Completely. This is the second track on Kill 'Em All. It's actually the longest track on Kill 'Em All as well. 7 minutes and 13 seconds, which, but I mean, obviously length and metal go hand in hand, really. They have this epic nature, but thrash metal's been sort of, run and gun to a certain extent. And I don't know about you, but I love the way this song starts. Everyone knows this song. It's probably one of Metallica's most famous songs from the early years. But just that da-na-na-na, and it's breakneck from the beginning.
Yeah, it doesn't let up at all, and it really sets the tone for what's going to come pretty much on every album from that point with the second track. The second really became nuanced with the name of the album. Yeah. Justice in particular is just this epic 10-minute thing. And then, Puppets, obviously, one of their best songs ever written, in my opinion. Oh, yeah. And it never really lets go with that kind of thing. I mean, in the Load stuff, you do kind of slip away from that, but you slip away from all things Metallica in their themes with Load and Reload.
True. I guess 2x4 is the sort of Four Horsemen equivalent, but the theory is, and Memory Remains as well. But yeah, there's sort of a breaking from what made Metallica to a certain extent. I'm sure people will disagree. And historically as well, Four Horsemen's an interesting track because it's one of the few tracks that has the Mustaine writing credit. And I don't know if you're aware, but he pretty much took the song because he felt that he wrote the whole song and redid it as mechanics on the first Megadeth record, and just basically did Four Horsemen at double the speed.
Yeah, I had heard that song long ago because I had heard that had happened, and he had taken it and he felt that it was, his song. Yeah. And when I listened to it, I mean, it's probably my bias coming in, but I feel that the tempo that the boys played it at is much more appropriate for what's going on. Yeah. It's much more too showy, in my opinion, and too fast for just the sake of being fast. And I really do not like the solo at the end of Mechanics. I think it's very sloppy.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a weird phenomenon, really, because when you're so used to a song, you're so used to the vocal melodies especially, and where the voice goes. And I think Mustaine's choice and register on Mechanics is a little odd, a little off for me. It's not as expansive as Four Horsemen as well. Obviously, Four Horsemen live, the band will often play the 5-minute version rather than the original 7-minute version, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, Mechanics, I think, by virtue of being very, very fast, is about 4 minutes or so. So we go from that intro, that, clattering intro, to that which is a very unusual thing. Like, if you know about it on guitar, they're using the bottom E string and they're playing over, but it's got a very busy, swingy swagger to it that's quite unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been playing guitar pretty much since the same time I picked up the Black Album. That was what caused me to get into that. And, obviously, I play a lot of Metallica. They're a huge influence on me.
Oh, yeah. They're so fun to play on guitar, aren't they? They're one of the bands that are just can't get enough of riffing them out.
Absolutely. And there's some songs that just to listen to, they're not always my favorite, but to play, they absolutely are. Mm-hmm. And some of them are the more obscure ones, like not obscure, but like All Nightmare Long is one of my favorite songs to play because it's just so complicated. Yeah. It's a real treat. But for that particular riff, it really it sets the tone for what's going to be kind of a gallopy type song all through, and it's just like, when you think about it and you listen to it, I mean, it kind of sounds like horses clopping along in a lot of different parts of the song. Yeah. And one of my favorite parts about that intro is there's a tiny little pitch harmonic that hits the first time. And what I noticed about it listening to it today, and I normally wouldn't pay attention to it that much, but I knew, that we would be talking about it in long form. And when you notice that when they go back to that riff, there's only one other time in the song that you hit that harmonic, which tells me, these guys aren't just laying down one take. They're playing this song as a band live on the tape. And that's really cool because you don't see that a lot. It's very Pro Tools cut and paste these days.
Yeah. It's almost like a finger was caught on the string, but they heard it, they kept it in. It adds a bit of flair to it, and then moving from that riff, which you're so right. I hadn't really considered it as horses, moving, but yeah, I completely agree. And I'll get to a point later which I feel is very equine, I guess the word, of a horse, and then we get into the verse riff, the diddle-a-dun, diddle-a-dun, which is very classic, very Sabbath, very Maiden, very open string being resolved to the power chords. And again, this has such a forward onslaught march. It's like Metallica have this way, and so many songs, I think For Whom the Bell Tolls is an obvious, it's just great riff after great riff after great riff. It's such quality.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I mean, there's certainly no shortage of great stuff on any album, really. I mean, Hetfield is just a riff writing machine.
Oh my God.
With this kind of stuff, and the sort of the nuances about how he plays is very interesting, because there's a lot of bands that would just do 2 open E's, ba 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 ba, instead, or maybe even 4 if they wanted to be flashy. But Hetfield here is really doing that 3-note gallop in a lot of stuff, that da 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 da, and Lars is matching him with the kick, and Cliff is in there. And if you listen to the remastered version that they put out a couple years ago, Cliff is really prominent. You can hear him, and he's just right there riffing along with them, playing finger bass. And I mean, I really got a whole new appreciation of Burton and his talents listening to that remastered version of this album.
Definitely. The quality that he gives to every track, especially, and yeah, I know what you're saying. The earlier mixes is a little bit more tough to discern certain elements of the song. One of the things that you can't forget about Kill 'Em All really is how the vocals sound. They are sort of drenched in reverb, but James is very young, and he kind of yelps a lot of these lines, like especially when he says "fourth winds blow." It's almost like his voice is breaking on track.
Yeah, for sure. And he sounds so young here. And I heard a copy of Hit the Lights that was even earlier than this, and he was singing totally different. And I know we're not talking about that song, but it's just like Hetfield's really like just growing up, over the course of these 2 albums. And he's not really singing necessarily, but yeah, he's just got that real punk barking kind of thing, and like that ow ow, that kind of thing going on, where I find it's got such great energy.
Yeah, it really does. It's really sincere, and there's something quite vital, quite blood-filled about it. And we get to the chorus, which again feels quite equine to me. So we just get simple chords here with the horsemen are drawing nearer, and you get the sense of sort of a landscape, a panorama, someone on horseback looking forward. And I love the bass as well. You talked about Burton before, like he's kind of McCartney-esque, like he's not going to settle on root notes. There's always little melody lines carving out little shapes underneath the guitars,
Absolutely, and that was something that I never, like I said, really paid attention to before. I mean, I was there and I was aware of it, but I'm always kind of focused on the guitar part and what the vocal melody's doing. And when he's doing those open notes, those open power chords descending down, Burton is not just like sitting back and doing the open string. I mean, he's in there, he's got little melody lines, and Lars keeps that gallop going with the toms and stuff all through that part. And it takes a part that could be very, very basic, very, I listened to Dream No More the other day, your podcast, and that intro is just, kind of descending notes.
Yeah.
And this could have been a lot like that, but there's so much movement, even though the guitars themselves aren't doing a whole lot.
Yeah, and, James again gets a good yelp on the second chorus with the "Day You Were Born!" like on the first line, and he's just sort of catching himself in. I love the subject matter. It's the most metal thing ever, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. But I love that, obviously going through the song, they realise we can't keep calling them the 4 horsemen. What else can we say? Quartet of Deliverance. That's just so badass.
It definitely is, yeah. It's you see a lot more of this type of same influence. Lyrically, I mean, it reminds me obviously a lot of like Creeping Death with the biblical references and telling those stories. And again, when you compare it to like the mechanics, it's no comparison at all lyrically. I mean, this is the far superior track.
Oh god, yeah. And I mean, like 4 Horsemen as well. For those not aware, from the New Testament, I believe, the sort of the revelation, death, famine, war, and pestilence, I think, are the ones there, which they sort of take liberties with slightly. They say famine, pestilence, death, and time. Yeah, it is a long song, and it has a lot of movement. So we have the first verse, chorus, chorus, second verse, second chorus, and then we just get into another spoil of riffs here, and we begin with one of the most metal things ever, Jason. Hetfield just chugging that open E.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Just that dun 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 dun. And it's one of those things that a lot of other people would cheat. You know, they would just go bop 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 or something like that. But to throw that little gallop in there, but it's never like there's nothing about Metallica that I've ever heard and I'm like, oh, he's just doing that to show us he can do that. You know, it fits the song perfectly for what they're trying to accomplish. And I'll never forget, like, one of my favorite performances, if you want to say, of that riff is off the live Binge and Purge when they're in San Diego and Lars gets up from his drum set, runs across that little sky bridge and hits that other kit. Yep. Like just as it finishes, the four guys are all there and they're just rocking out, and you could just, man, you could feel it. It's such a cool riff, and it's only one note, but it's such a cool riff.
Yeah, it is, and I like the way it's built upon as well. The now the guitar's coming over the top as well, sort of interrupting. Reminds me a little bit, and this is sort of a bit of an obscure pull, but the sort of bridge section after the solo in Cyanide, they do a similar thing where you have one guitar interrupting the other, and that sort of dissonance creates a lot of excitement. And then you have something that feels very Thin Lizzy-esque, the no, you know, the sort of pentatonic move down, and then into another riff, that da-na-na-na-na-na-na, like that again is just classic to me. It's kind of gnarled in a certain way, and it's only making these notes that made me realise how much I love Four Horsemen. Like, I've always thought it's a good song, but going through the notes, I'm just like, bloody hell, the quality.
Yeah, absolutely. This particular riff, I found really challenging when I was first learning how to play.
Yeah,
and
I haven't actually tried to play it. Is it just a difficult fingering, or?
It's, well, you're playing 5/7 on the E string, and then you got to hit 8 on the A. And a lot of players find it hard to go from ring finger on one string to pinky on the next string down, and that's that particular move. So I've always played it open A, 2 on A, and then C, then 3-2, 0-2, you know, on the D string. So I kind of cheated a little bit, and I feel slightly guilty when I do, because when I play, you know, I really try to play exactly how Hetfield does, because I feel like that's the only way to do it correctly.
Yeah.
So it's for those that know, you know, that riff, it's a very similar kind of challenging fingering to the tail end of Moth into Flame, where it does that, you know, it's kind of the same pattern right in there, and it's definitely tricky. What I especially like about that riff, though, Tom, is how they hang on it for 8 measures. Right. There's so many bands that have cool riffs, and they're just out of them too quick. They're just on to the next thing too quick. And you can definitely tell, like, these guys know that this is a kick-ass riff, and we're going to hang here, and you're going to listen to it for 20 seconds, and you're going to like it, you know?
Yeah, well, James sings over it, and we get another sort of creeping death similarity with the time, famine, you know, the sort of the gang vocals behind him. And I like how, you know, the sort of the person that he's describing is being affected by each 4 of the horsemen in certain ways. Famine is tearing the body, you have to endure pestilence, time is, you know, the lines that crack on your face. It's, you know, it's all fantastic stuff. And we get into the section which isn't really played live, as I say, the sort of slower section. It feels a little Lynyrd Skynyrd to me. It feels a little Southern Rocky to me, you know. Like, it doesn't feel very thrashy at all. What are your thoughts on this bit?
Yeah, it's like a lot of things with Metallica where you'll hear it, and the first time you'll go through, you'll feel like it's kind of out of place, but then they're so good that eventually you just kind of accept it as, okay, this is where we're going now. Yeah. It definitely feels like a totally different part of the song, and I was reading a bit about the history of the song, and you brought up Lynyrd Skynyrd, and I think that Mustaine was quoted that he said that part was particularly built to be influenced by Skynyrd, and it does have a very Sweet Home Alabama kind of vibe where you have the 2 pedal notes set in the root, and then you have the 2 descending, you know, so dun dun yeah. The thing that I find coolest about there, going back to Burton, is each of the 4 times James and Kirk play that melody, Burton's doing something totally different all 4 times.
Yeah.
And it fits. It's not like Burton standing out. It adds to the build toward that solo.
Definitely. He's ascending up. And let's talk about that solo, because, I mean, there's two real solos, the one that closes, which is a bit more traditional metal. And this one's quite bluesy, isn't it? Kirk in that load-reload mode before it really existed.
Yeah, I mean, it is totally different. I mean, really compared to anything else on the album, it's the only section that's like this. And I particularly like this solo better than the closeout solo.
Sure, yeah.
And it's one of the only times, I think, pretty much in their whole catalog where they have sort of, it's not a guitar duel, or it's not two guitars playing in unison like like you'll get with like One or something like that, that da 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 da. It's not that. It's like two guitar solos that complement each other that are just laid on top.
Yeah, it's. I've been listening to a lot of Yes recently, and that's something they do a lot at the end of their big songs, where because it almost feels like two people talking at once, and it shouldn't work, but it does in this sense. You can follow either lead, you can let both of them sort of soak over you, and I love the ambition here for a band like this to do a big Four Horsemen, the Apocalypse epic, and really pull it off.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, for them to have Motor Breath and this song on the same album, it really shows the range and their variety of influence.
Anesthesia as the fifth track as well.
Yeah, I mean, Burton is just so ridiculously good.
Oh my gosh.
His influence is felt across all three of these albums that he's a part of. And it's a shame that he wasn't able to contribute further.
Yeah, no, of course. And, we end this section with, again, that sort of 70s descending riff that we heard before. And then, back into riffs we've heard otherwise as well. And, it's all really, really compelling stuff. There's sort of a bass burble. That's kind of how I could describe it, like a really wide note that sort of moves down into the pedal point riff. And, we sort of play out on familiar territory we've heard before. The chorus comes back as well, and, the song gallops. And, then we get that more discordant, typical guitar solo, which I agree with you, Jason. It's not as interesting as the bluesier middle one, but still, it's kind of vintage, young Kirk.
Yeah, that studio effect, to go back to that, and I call it that because when I was learning the song, I went out and bought the tab books and stuff, and even those didn't really know what to call that. That
yeah.
And there's never replication of it live. They just kind of have a little drum fill there.
Why do you think that they cut the song down live? Because they pretty much exclusively play the 5-minute version.
I think it's just an effort to kind of keep the energy up, and it might be that they didn't like it down the road.
Maybe it's a double guitar solo thing. I guess James
probably
can do that, but yeah.
Well, when you listen to it, the last time I heard them play the entire thing live was during that 30th birthday celebration,
right.
And the solo wasn't quite as exhilarating without the other stuff. And live, there's just a lot of dissonance and a lot of notes going on with James's part, and he doesn't go clean with it, so it's still distorted, and it sounds much better on the album than live. I don't think it's a live friendly kind of part to the song.
Yeah.
So it doesn't bother me that they cut it out, but I'm really glad that it's on the album because it's a great couple minutes of music.
Oh my god, yeah. And it's a staple of their live set pretty much. Unfortunately, I didn't see it in Birmingham, but they've played it 537 times. They debuted it in New York, 1983, April 22nd. They last played it yesterday at the time of us recording this. They played it in Hamburg, March 29th, 2018. I'm sure they're going to continue to play it for the rest of their career. Any closing thoughts on Four Horsemen, Jason?
Well, like we were talking about with that solo on the outro, I love the beginning, that kind of stair-steppy, working down the strings. But the solo itself, it feels, if I can be so bold, like kind of boring.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
It's kind of like, we came up with 4 or 5 interesting parts, and each of those parts just gets repeated, 8 or 9 times. And so it's not one of my personal favorites, and it's not the best solo on this album by far. It's not even the best solo in this song.
No,
but
no.
But it is definitely, this whole album is just Kurt dumping out his whole riff bag, like his whole lick bag, and by the time he gets to Horseman, it's like I mean, he's already soloed for basically 3 minutes and hit the lights. So
yeah,
I don't know if there was too much left in the tank for it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And this era of just guitar soloing in general, it just seemed to be as fast as you go. Don't worry about phrasing. Don't worry about any sort of memorability. Just show off your technique. Just have a bit of a, just wank off on the fretboard. No one really cares. And, obviously Kirk will develop some incredible leads in this album, and then, ride the lightning. How many good leads does he have on that record? It's out of this world. But yeah. Four Horsemen is a masterpiece in my eyes, really, a fantastic Metallica song. Please let us know in the comments below what you think of this song. Please let us know also, get in touch with me, metallicapod@gmail.com. The next song we're doing is Frantic. So if you've got any opinions on Frantic, good or bad, if you hate Frantic, let me know. I will read out anything you give to me. It's always good to get a variety of correspondence there. We just spoke about this song being played live. I know you've seen the band a few times live. Have you seen this song live?
I have seen the song live, yeah, and it was definitely the truncated version.
Right, of course.
For sure.
Today, we're looking at Kill 'Em All. We're looking at a completely different type of Metallica. Like, what do you prefer personally? The more old school or that kind of Alternica shit?
Yeah, I'm definitely an old school fan. I grew up with the band in the '80s, and I at the risk of triggering some people, I'll freely admit that the Black Album is where I kind of felt like I got marginalized as a fan.
Okay.
And so this is definitely my era and what I love to listen to.
For me, I don't know about for you, like, I just love what era this is coming from, and I love hearing the beginnings of the band and how raw it is and charming in some of its foibles production-wise. As a Metallica fan, I think Kill 'Em All is something you always regard fondly as a release.
Absolutely. I used to think of Kill 'Em All as being kind of the spark that lit the fuse, but when you get down to this song, Motor Breath, it's kind of the big bang of the band. I hope I'm not stepping on your toes with the subject matter, but we know this is kind of the first song that reportedly James ever wrote. Mm-hmm. And I watched some of those shows about the history of the universe, and they kind of roll back time and say all the matter that exists in the universe can be put back into this one particle. And that's kind of Motor Breath to me. This is where it all starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a highlight of the record. Terrific song. One of their, is it their shortest song at 3 minutes, 8 seconds? Is there anything shorter?
That's my understanding. I think Hardwired is 3:10, so it's just a little bit longer, and I think this one keeps that crown.
Yeah, and it's just a track that I always return to, and that intro riff, very simple, the single string coming in after the kicking drum intro, but so powerful. And despite its apparent simplicity, it's something that's really addicting, and it's got such a bite to it. And I love that line. I think, it's so good that that's the first thing Hetfield wrote, because it's so creative and so compelling. Like, I just love the way it rides.
Absolutely. And I think, if you're someone who played guitar, you can kind of put yourself in that mindset and remember sitting in your bedroom as a teenager trying to write that first song. Hear the first song in this.
You can, because the riff is kind of James dragging his finger across the string in a very artistic way. There's not purpose in it, but just the technique that he's using, I don't see very often in music. And that riff is great, and then into, I guess, kind of the main riff, the sort of the thrashy riff, the breakdown riff. What do you think of that?
I just think it's great all along. What this song maybe lacks for sophistication, it certainly makes up for in authenticity and energy. And if you're a fan of Metallica, how could you not love this moment in time?
What do you think throughout the track of James's vocals?
Better than No Life Till Leather. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. There's the odd sort of pubescent burst or whatever at the end of these vocals, but for the most part, it's quite melodic and commanding.
And another cool thing I think about this song is thematically, it's kind of a predecessor to Fuel. You kind of hear the same concepts coming out of him. So, it's just, it's the last time I was on here, we did House That Jack Built, and we spent, a good 15 minutes really dissecting that song and going through the different layers and the effects in the studio and the themes of the lyrics. And, I think we even talked about the talk box solo and what we thought of that. And, we really kind of did that just to determine whether or not we thought that was a good song. And then you come to a song like this, which is as simple and straightforward as they come, and there's just a magic to it that you don't even have to dissect. It's just right there in front of you, and it's just great. Yeah,
it's self-evident, it's breathless, the 2/4 break, the it's very hypnotic, it's very proggy, it's quite off center, I think, and it just adds to the sense of adrenaline that pumps through the song. And we have I love this thing. Like Metallica would never do this, and no band really does this in the modern age. But the solo key change, like just kicking up as the solo kicks in, like it's such a kind of gimmicky thing to do, but it really works.
Oh, it's just cool as could be. Yeah, it really gives some flavor to that section of the song.
What do you think of Kirk's solos on Motor Breath?
Well, we kind of all know that he's just kind of replaying Mustaine's part, so there's a little bit of variation in there. But I love Dave Mustaine's playing. I think he's an incredible shredder, but I've always preferred Kirk. I think he's got a little more musicality to him.
Yeah.
Mustaine to me is kind of like, I envision a down power line and the sparks are coming out of it. And, the road crew's back there putting up a sign that says stay 1,000 feet back. And, Kirk may not quite have that, but I've always felt his playing's a little more musical and a little more fluidity to it, especially during this era of the band. And I love it. I think he pulls it off perfect.
Yeah, that's not to say that, Dave Mustaine didn't go on to be quite a good guitar soloist, like, Holy Wars and certain stuff off Rushed in Peace, like Lucretia. Like, there's certain things he plays that I don't think maybe Kirk could have gone with, but there is just kind of a heroicism about Kirk to a certain extent that Dave never really had. I think you're quite right. He was quite loose and unbridled. Yeah, I like the solo. I think Kirk's use of wah is really good, especially in the opening section. It really feels like a deep breath being taken, like Damage Inc. as well, certain sections of that. It's noodly, it's kind of showy-offy, it's kind of like, the Bay Area scene, everyone's fucking, going crazy up there. But the song's very simple, it sort of goes back into the chorus. We actually get the verse riff played solo as well. We get a few other sections put in, but for a 3:08 song, it's just a real run and gunner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a good example of a song that where the sum is kind of greater than the parts.
And they've played this live, many, many times, 312 times live.
Yeah, how cool is that the first crazy song you ever wrote not only makes it on a record, but stays in your set list pretty recurrently for your whole career.
Yeah, to the point that you played it, very, very recently. Last played it February 28th, 2019. So about a month ago in El Paso, Texas, of course. But, everyone wants to see this song. It is a treat of a number, and it is crazy that they've put it in there. I think, this was I think they played this at the first gig that James, it was kind of the breakthrough gig, because it's the first one that James ever sung and played guitar. And that was, they debuted it in that performance, and it's just such a dyed-in-the-wall early Metallica tune. Yeah,
I actually saw it. Looks like the first time they played it was at a high school.
Yeah.
Which is it's just amazing, right? I mean, they're playing it at a high school, and then 35 years later, they're playing it in stadiums. It's just incredible.
Yeah. That was Don Haskins Center, apparently, yeah. A crazy. And you seeing them live then, in general, how was that experience?
It's surreal. I hadn't seen them since 1989, so it's literally been 30 years for me. And it was a great night. I got to take my family with me, and I got to take my 3 sons and 2 of my daughters, who are all older now than I was the last time I saw the band. And they're what I would call casual Metallica fans, but it's just so infectious when you're there at that show that it was a great night. It was a special night, and one that for me as a parent, the irony was that my parents would have done anything they could to keep me away from a Metallica show. And now it's a family event, and it was just fantastic.
Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, we recently had Russell on speaking about the North Carolina show, and I'm always curious. I hope that Metallica release it in some sort of Netflix tie-in. How was the Jim Brewer show?
It was okay. It was. I think the biggest...
Don't let me down. It was only okay. It's long, right? Apparently, it goes a couple of hours.
It is long. I think it was a really choppy feeling because he would come out and he'd do 5-10 minutes, and then he would disappear, and they would just play music, and they'd come back for another 5 minutes. And I'm not sure the concept is totally worked out still. I know a lot of people would rather see an opening band, and that was my instinct as well. But once it was there, it kind of felt like, hey, we're here to celebrate Metallica. And so I was cool with it. It just felt like the night was about the band. So yeah, it was enough to pump everybody up and build that anticipation. And I think the big surprise for me, just from the moment we entered into the arena, there was just an electricity in the air that I haven't felt at a live event in a long time, and you could tell they're, the fact that the majority of the crowd was probably middle-aged, but it felt like everybody felt like kids again. So it was really cool.
Yeah. And, I mean, the show itself, at the risk of recapping the whole thing, like, briefly, I mean, the worldwide tour, of course, has been dynamite so far, so unsurprisingly, the band is so consistent. Like, how was the evening?
It was great. I mean, you watch a lot of the Hardwired tours leading up to going to the show, but the videos online just don't do justice to how it feels when you're actually there at the show. We got a great set list. We got Whiplash. We got Fight Fire with Fire. Just some really cool deep cuts for some of us older fans. I thought they did a really nice job of balancing the old and the new. I'm a pretty big fan of Hardwired. I think, despite the fact that I think only about 60% of that album is good, they played 5 songs off that record, and they all came off pretty good. Here Comes Revenge was a little bit rough. I loved the riff in that song, but I think it was kind of it lost a little bit of energy during that song. But otherwise, I mean, it's just the experience. You go to so many shows where you're kind of there watching the band. Metallica always feels like you're just a part of the show. So, I don't know what to say about it other than it was just a memorable night that I know I'll never forget it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, no matter where you are, James is like the fucking, one of those seeing eye paintings. It always feels like he's looking at you and like acknowledging you. And did he have that sort of chintzy James moment towards the end where he speaks to the crowd and talks about like parents and stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. It was definitely the pop ahead attitude. A much different feel than the last time I saw them.
The Damaged Justice tour, that would not have flown.
Yeah, they don't, not quite the same fury on stage that they had back then, but it really just ultimately didn't matter. It was just the experience of being there and the community and feeling like you were part of the group, and it was just great.
So going back to the song then, as always, as we do, follow the show at Metallica Pod, open up to you guys. What do you think? And a brief tweet or two of Motor Breath. Metallica Bible saying, great tune. I've seen them perform it live in Dublin 2009. It made me appreciate the energy of the song a lot more. MTI saying, one of my favourites on Kill 'Em All. Always felt like there was a little more melody and hookiness to it, especially vocally, compared to the rest of the album. Jeremy, I would say that's fair, right?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely, again, one of those songs that when you hear it live, it just takes on a whole new, meaning and a whole new aura about that song than you hear on the album.
Yeah. I mean, that's not to say there aren't vocal performances on here that really fit the song. I think Jump in the Fire is excellent as well. And pretty much every song that we've covered on Alphabetallica on Kill 'Em All, I've always sort of gushed about. Like, I do really, really love this album. Metal Militia we covered recently, which is, I don't know, maybe my most forgettable song on Kill 'Em All, I'd say. But Motor Breath is certainly one that I adore. It is a terrific fucking song. So going back to the Twitter, Robert saying, probably their best non-cover punk song. Those people who tell you not to take chances, they are all missing on what life's about. You only live once, so take care of the chance. Don't end up like the others. Same song and dance. Pretty cool refrain. Yeah, Robert, I completely agree, actually. I always took that for granted, but reading it on that tweet and going back and listening, it's quite some effective, young James Hetfield philosophy. Like.
Yeah, and I think you're right. It's you got to keep in mind how old he was at that point. And, it's kind of funny. The lyrics they're almost a little bit quaint at this point. But, it was almost kind of like he was 4 or 5 years ahead of where the band actually was at that point and celebrating the lifestyle that they were just starting to experience.
The history as well with yourself and the scene at that time, like you mentioned Iron Maiden before and Judas Priest. And I have to say, as I mentioned before, me getting into Kill 'Em All, me getting into this sort of thrash stuff, I do like this music kind of for just what it is and how it is something in a genre. It's just heavy guitars and really kind of dangerous playing, exciting songs. And, Dokken I've been listening to quite a lot. I mentioned him on the show before.
That was the first band I've ever seen. I saw Dokken open for Dio.
George Lynch is crazy.
I do like Dokken, but I have to say, because of Metallica...
Yeah.
They came out kind of against all the glam stuff. I mean, it was a conscious band, and it was an us against them. It was here's the glam guys and here's the hardcore guys, and that's how it was back then. It was it wasn't so much like today as all these different musics to get into and genres and all that. I mean, it was like that, but it was a little bit more, people identified more with music than they do nowadays.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Like, you see the fashions that I know you indulged in.
Well, there were people with bandanas on their legs and all that stuff, and leather spikes and all that stuff. And I did live in Southern California, so there was plenty of that. But then that was the thing. Metallica said, "Hey, we just wear on stage what we walk around in." You know, they weren't into the actually, though. I guess James was in the very original. He did have a couple spandex pants and all that, but he got out of it.
So, jump in the fire then. When was the first time you heard this?
Well, okay, after I got, Ride the Lightning, I went out and I remember going to the record store and looking through, and there's Kill 'Em All. Turn the album over, and there the guys on the back just looking ugly as ever, just looking so serious and mean, which was out of nowhere. I mean, it was just that this kind of music was kind of out of nowhere for me. I mean, of course, Motorhead was influential and all that, but just the intensity of it, the aggressiveness of it, and the seriousness of it. And they weren't singing about girls and partying. It was Metallica.
And there's no build-up here. It goes straight into the main riff, a riff that I actually love, a riff that obviously has Mustaine's fingerprints all over it. It's a very spidery, addictive riff, right?
Yes. I mean, they kind of just keep... I mean, and again, I've told you I'm not like really a big musical guy. You can talk to me about all that stuff. But it's kind of repetitive in a way, but it's a fun song. It's a great dance. I mean, you just really get into that, and then the great chorus. There's
so much classic stuff about it, but there's so much artistry about it as well. I think Cliff, is excellent as the bass in early on.
You can totally hear the bass in there.
Yeah, and he's not just playing bass notes, it's McCartney-esque, how he's sort of catching and releasing and working with the drums. And the riff as well that I mentioned, it's quite mercurial, it'll shift, it's not that repetitive. And it's so cool to me, I don't know if I guess you feel the same way, that Mustaine was such an architect early on with Metallica and then went on to do his own great thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, Megadeth's probably my third favorite of the big four. I like Slayer's
really?
the number
Third?
2 there.
Okay, who's second?
Slayer's 2.
Slayer. Okay, yeah. Makes
sense. They've got some amazing albums. I mean, they're but I couldn't. I mean, I don't mind Mustaine singing. I like a couple of the songs, but I never really got into Megadeth. But I appreciate his influence on Metallica.
Yeah, huge influence. I mean, he pretty much brought this song, the original...
Yeah, that was his song.
Yeah, his original lyrics and content, which apparently, I didn't realise this...
they're right in front of me.
Yeah, they
horrible.
They dealt with sex.
Which I want to defend him in a way, because that wasn't out of the blue back then. I mean, Scorpions, AC/DC, Judas Priest even had plenty of songs with sexual references and all that, so it wasn't unheard of. But I think, I don't know what the decision was made, but Metallica at some point said, okay, we're not doing any songs about girls or partying. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And they did keep one line from it. I'm looking at there's a job to be done, and I'm the one.
Okay. But, Hetfield's lyrics then a bit of a departure, revolving around people being damned to hell.
Yeah. It's kind of like a devil down in hell saying... it's almost like, in a way, I'm looking through it, it's like, you are evil, and this is where you're going to be, and I'm going to take you down here.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of inviting you off the straight path, tempting you as a huckster, and it is just, it's classic, really. I mean, it's kind of cliche that it's about the devil and fire and brimstone and stuff, but it's so badass the way it works. It operates so cleanly.
Yep. Well, I'm just looking at the old lyrics, though. I mean, when he said, because I have listened to the power metal demo where James sings these lyrics. When they say, "Now I take off my pants." I mean, God, it's just cringe.
and James's vocal as well. It's so, there's something about the vocal tone on Kill 'Em All that's fascinating. It's so high pitched. It's so in this weird harmonic vacuum. And, fire, like, the way it kind of crackles, and it has an effect.
Jump in the fire!
Yeah. And the backing vocals as well. The way they come on, Van Halen-esque, they work very well to complement. And the song is just that sort of kill 'em all mold, isn't it? It's just great riff after great riff. You know, the songs on this album,
riff after great riff.
really, really original, I think. They were coming with a lot of predecessors, a lot of influence already, but they carved out a niche pretty much instantly in their own flavour.
Yes, they put it all together so right. I mean, there was all kinds of things out there that were bands like this, that had a couple songs like this. There was, punk, especially with the Misfits.
Yeah, look at Metal Mania. Like, they stick out on that.
Yeah. It's just, they just put it all together right.
Yeah. And we get a lot of Kirk soloing. He does sort of an intro lick to lead us into the verse.
There's almost like 3 solos in the song.
Yeah, and it's the second one is kind of bluesy in nature, kind of more standard Kirky at times, double stops, long sort of derivative lines that are okay. The problem is I'm watching a lot of Guthrie Govan recently. I don't know if you're aware of that guitar player, British guitar player.
No.
Yeah, he's a very accomplished. He does like G3 with Steve Vai and stuff like that. He's with the Aristocrats. People might be aware of this instrumental trio, but yeah, very, very good guitar player. I can't remember watching him all weekend to sort of listen to this song. It was a little, but again, it's of its time. It plays that, and the final solo.
That final solo is amazing.
Yeah, very cool. The sort of open note single string idea, and the song ramps up. I love that bit.
Yeah, I love just the fact that they said, "Hey, let's put in another amazing solo." Let's just. They never did anything standard. They're craftsmen. They just go over every line. They just think about every part of their song. Yeah, they're professionals.
Yeah, it kind of like Hit the Lights, really, which just ends with a big solo, and that's kind of what you did back then. You didn't sort of construct these complex, one numbers. You just sort of, had Kirk go wild there, and it does work. And I do really dig this song.
They got one part in the lyrics. There's living your life as me, I am you, you see. I mean, you can't really hear the lyrics so much in the song as well as, like in the later albums. But yeah.
Yeah, it's really difficult actually to hear the lyrics, and I defy anyone to listen to them and transcribe them quite correctly.
You kind of make up your own in your head.
Yeah,
it works
because it's kind of like you're being advised to this underworld. It kind of plays into the whole burbly nature of it. But yeah, it's a really good track, and I know some people maybe, I don't know, are sort of derisive towards this stuff. They feel it's a little dated, but that's kind of why I like it as well. I think that informs it, because it's just wonderful capsule.
Oh, what is it? Okay, one thing I note on this song, what is it when you when they're going into he's going into the second solo, and you can hear the strings like they're kind of wiping their nails on the strings.
Yeah, it's interesting what happens there. He's sort of just chugging behind before he gets into the main solo, but not really soloing. Yeah, he's kind of droning on the note. I noticed that as well.
But they're doing like dun 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 dun. You can hear the it's almost like he's rubbing his finger on the string.
Yeah,
but it's interesting. I like it.
No, it is, and Hetfield, as ever, or should I say, Mustaine, the guitar parts are reliably interesting. The verse that he sings over is great. It has this sort of dead string mute that I really like, that just makes it a little bit more tenser, a little bit more energetic. The production of the guitars, as sort of slightly thin, scooped as they are still incredibly compelling. I love the riff that they solo over, which comes in on the third solo as well. Is again sort of a dirgy thing. It's not going to reinvent the wheel. It's not the most memorable Metallica riff ever, but it gets the job done for the top layer.
It's kind of an anthemic chorus, they're inviting the crowd. So come on, jump in the fire with us.
Yeah. It feels built for the stage, doesn't it, to a certain extent?
Yeah, which is funny because I was kind of looking into stuff on YouTube just before this, and I saw a thing where they hadn't played this since '84, for 20 years after '84. I saw this thing where Lars, they were kind of relearning it, and Lars is talking about, it's a very funny video actually, but it's like they last played it '84, and then for 20 years, and then they played it again in 2004. So they apparently weren't that big into it, but I think it was James and Kirk wanted to bring it back.
Yeah, and they did it at the Orion Festival, right, as well as Dahan.
Sure.
Which is another cool version. There's a few cool live versions online actually. They played the Record Store Day. I think it was Rasputin's.
I just watched that. Yeah, that was pretty good.
That was pretty good actually. And they tuned the song down. I don't know if you noticed when they do it live.
All I know is it sounded good. I liked it.
Yeah, it's in D standard as opposed to the sort of earlier live performances of that. But yeah, 91 times it's been performed. It was first performed in Anaheim, March 14th, 1982. Most recently in Berkeley, as I mentioned, Rasputin's. That was April 16th, 2016. Jim, any closing thoughts on Jump Into the Fire? Jump in the Fire?
So they haven't played it at all on this tour again.
Hasn't been played on the worldwide jaunts, no.
All right, maybe they'll break it out pretty soon. Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay. On the Jump in the Fire, it's a good song. I like it. I mean, it's not something that you just like Four Horsemen or anything, but I think it's a great song off the album.
Yeah, and as always, I reached out to the good people at Metallica Pod on Twitter at Metallica Pod. So yeah, just asking what people thought of the songs. Pim Jicken saying his least favourite on Kill 'Em All, but wouldn't mind hearing it live again. Which, we were just saying, would be awesome to see that return to the set. Luke Sineji saying, cool song. I find Kill 'Em All gets a bit samey, but this breaks it up. Monster Mash Michael saying, super catchy stuff, one of the funnest tracks on the album. I think
it's definitely fun.
Yeah, it's a hell of a lot of fun. Yeah, as kind of most of, pretty much all of Kill 'Em All is really enjoyable.
Yeah, but I mean, like Four Horsemen, I don't say it's fun. It's intense, it's heavy, but Jump in the Fire is kind of like it's kind of a fun song.
Yeah,
it's kind of like, hey, let's lighten the mood a little bit. Even though we're singing about hell and demons, let's lighten the mood a little bit. And then they go into Anesthesia and then Whiplash and yeah.
Hit the Lights has a kind of lot of fun about it, a lot of buoyancy.
Sure.
That I think it shares with this. Joe Haddock saying jumpy, fiery, Mustaine. I love it. And finally, John saying love the outro solo from Kirk. Love his playing on this album.
Sure.
So let us know in the comments what you think down below about the song Jump in the Fire. Cliff Burton is someone that definitely needs a bit more grounding in the certain mythos of Metallica. An incredible human being, a wonderful, wonderful instrumentalist, and obviously Anesthesia, pulling teeth. This is the first instrumental of Metallica. It's on Kill 'Em All. It's in the middle. It's a weird sort of explosive prog. I mean, we're gonna get into it note by note shortly, but I just want to kind of spend a little time. I've got quite a collection here of sort of Metallica books and stuff, and I found some really nice passages about Cliff, so maybe stuff you haven't heard, so we're going to get into that shortly. But just before I do, John, Cliff Burton as a player to you, what does he mean?
As I said earlier, like, listened to Metallica since I was a little kid, so obviously been influenced by him from one point to another. Classically trained, obviously, again, turned me on to things like that. So it shows where it can come through in like rock playing and stuff. Like if you're listening and you're getting lessons or whatever, it's worth going get classical lessons. You're never not going to need to know that shit. Cliff Burton as a player, fantastic.
Yeah, and I mean, it's crucial. He wasn't just to quote another bass player that I know we both adore, John, he wasn't just a Billy Sheehan, in a certain way. He wasn't, not that Billy Sheehan isn't a good songwriter, but Billy Sheehan, the technician,
No.
Billy Sheehan from Mr. Big. One day, by the way, I'm going to do a Mr. Big podcast. I think when I'm older, I think they're one of those bands that needs, like, the recognition. They were such a fucking good band. I think the first two albums especially, Lean Into It, etc. It kind of, just incredible.
I'm going to be the first person to suggest my song for that podcast.
Yes. It's like I do the alphabet again, but this time it's Mr. Big. It's just like this guy won't stop. Like, I could do loads though. You could, I think a lot of people could do loads, but Cliff,
it's endless.
It is endless. That's the beauty of it. Cliff, he's a virtuoso like Billy, but like he's a pioneer. He's an artist, and I just want to quote a little bit from Birth School Metallica Death, your constant companion in this podcast. I had Paul Brannigan on the show recently, Kerrang editor, guy who co-wrote this book, great guy. Anyway, this is from the book, and this is concerning sort of Burton's upbringing. It says, quote, on May 19th, 1975, Scott Burton, who was Cliff's brother, was the victim of a cerebral aneurysm. The 16-year-old was taken to hospital but later died. Needless to say, the effect on the family unit was both searing and immediate. Friends of Cliff, the insular and quietly defiant remaining son, observed that although the death of his older brother affected him in a profound manner, this loss was something about which he rarely spoke. Instead, it seems that the enigmatic 13-year-old opted to give voice to his grief in the form of actions which, as befits the cliché, spoke louder than the words he chose to rarely utter. Although Burton had begun playing the bass guitar and prior to that piano before the tragedy that befell his family, it seems that the loss of a sibling served to focus his mind on the task at his fingers. He studied not only the popular bass players of the day, musicians such as Rush's Geddy Lee and Black Sabbath's Geezer Butler, but also the scales and notations heard in Bach and Beethoven, as well as the disciplines of Baroque music. As his talents grew, the young player would practice up to 6 hours a day, his abilities sufficient to outgrow the tutelage of more than one music teacher. So, we have, within this kind of, this genesis of Cliff here, there's something quite tragic, the passing of his close brother. And I remember reading in Back to the Front, which is the Metallica sort of Master of Puppets coffee table book. There was a fan talking about how he complimented Cliff on a hat he was wearing, and Cliff was like, "Oh, thanks, it was my brother's who passed away," and really kind of nice interaction there. And to go on to that obsessive practicing, which I'm sure you're familiar with, John, the sort of the woodshedding that he was exhibiting there, it shows there was a remarkable talent from the off, really. There was real potential there. The uniqueness of Cliff, really, I think, is something that shines through, and, the guy is an astonishing revelation, and the song begins, bass solo take one. I quite like that it starts with just someone just saying that and it plays.
I quite like that. It sort of brings it back down to earth. It's always nice to hear other bands in the studio, like however cliche it is, people uploading like video logs and shit of them in the studio. I still think it's great, like brings them back to earth, as I said, and sort of humanises the whole them being so high up there as gods of rock and shit.
Yeah, but I mean back then, Kill 'Em All was very sort of early days, and when I've been listening to this song obviously endlessly over the past week or so, just really kind of hammering it.
What's your favourite song off Kill 'Em All?
My favourite, probably Motor Breath. I think.
Yeah.
I love the riffs. I think it's a very original song. I think the solo is really compelling as well. But what about yourself?
Fair play. I don't know, man. Because being in like some sort of random covers band when I was learning at school, we always used to go through like playing shit like Master of Puppets, and then I remember the singer at the time, Neil Johnson, he was like, I love this song, Am I Evil?
Oh yeah.
So we started playing Am I Evil at like all the school concerts and that. Oh.
Yes,
I remember one time one time I was playing drums at one of these little school concerts, and it was like the first time that the drums were on a stage riser. Right. So I was playing away, like we were like 10 seconds into it, and the bass drum just fell off the riser.
Oh no.
Fuck the whole
rock
thing.
And roll,
like,
man.
To shut the curtains. Literally, the whole school was laughing. So I was just sort of sat there like shit.
That's stardom, man. That's the first taste.
But probably I Am Evil.
Yeah. It was crazy.
Am I Evil? Sorry.
Am I Evil? Yeah. Which it was on I think it was on a Kill 'Em All. Creeping Death single originally or something like that. But yeah,
because it was added on to the re-release, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Diamond Head. Yeah, it was. The Diamond Head cover, of course. But when you think of the album, when you think of songs like Motor Breath, songs like Am I Evil, Four Horsemen, whatever, Anesthesia really sticks out, doesn't it? It's a lot proggier than the rest of the album.
Yeah. I mean, just the bass tone alone, it's just dripping with reverb, and like obviously he's slaying the Big Muff and the Wah. It's just like overall the bass tone just sort of engulfs the whole. I don't know whether you're listening through headphones or whatever. It just sort of puts your head in a little box. And all you can hear is just...
Interesting because it's such a showcase, really, for Cliff. And it's great that we get this fuzz bass and a kind of classic, retreating arpeggio set. It's very hypnotic, actually. And it's kind of... A lot of the song gets its power from being anchored around those kind of octave bass shifts. Like, it's played with those kind of, that sense of a kind of a build there. But I love its exploratory nature. It reminds me a little bit of Guthrie Govan, that when you first hear it...
Yeah, I think that's what drew me to like it. With, if I heard it for the first time, obviously, I never really cared for it when I was younger. But, like, hearing it again, like, after you requested me to, do it on the podcast, it was quite refreshing just hearing it. Because I would have heard it as sort of like... literally just a mishmash of riffs that he jammed on, or just a couple of little licks that he wanted to play in the same key or same songs as one of these other ones. But yeah, as you say, listening through it, it's like it just flows, doesn't it? As you say, like a Guthrie Govan peace.
Yeah, like when you look at Guthrie, it's suddenly very clinical in a way, even though it's still very human. And you know, when there's rarely two words in rock that will usher as many eye rolls as bass solo. Like, you know, it's just true. And like, this is coming from a guy who, you know, I love this sort of shit. Like, you know, I eat it up, but I understand. But I think this is so much more than that. You know, okay, the end of the song, the drums come in and it becomes a bit more classic. You know, he's laying down a rhythm on top. But even that ends with some mad sounds that he's conjuring from that instrument.
Sort of halfway through that last bit, I think it's like 3 minutes on or something. There's sort of a build, and he's just sort of like sliding and bending up, and it just sounds like the build up to one of the solos in a Thunder and Lightning Thin Lizzy song.
Oh right, it's interesting you mentioned that actually, because I was watching them. I don't know if you know Metallica are on this stadium tour at the moment. You know, they're fucking slaying America. And one of the cool things they're doing, which I think is so good, is if you're at the concert, they give you like a code and you can live stream like them like warming up and shit. And like obviously
that's wicked.
People have put it on YouTube and they're really fucking good. And just the other day actually, James was playing Cold Sweat by Thin Lizzy, which is off that Thunder and Lightning album.
Tune.
It was the na. Yeah, it's so. I mean, I love Thin Lizzy. That again, Thin Lizzy are another one I could do a podcast on easily. But, I mean,
so easy.
Yeah. Oh man,
you'd have so many people to do it with as well.
Oh, people, yeah, because I mean, everyone loves Thin Lizzy. Like that was one of the things that I found with Thin Lizzy was when my dad like introduced to him when I was quite young, and I always really liked them. Obviously, they're great, but I was always like, oh, it's kind of a dad band, even though they're awesome. And then I remember seeing like literally the same day, I saw Axl Rose and James Hetfield like rocking Thin Lizzy shirts, like, and I was like, I think it's a cool band. I didn't realise. I was like, you know, but I mean, obviously they play to those kind of, you know, harmonising strengths. They're classic good songwriting as well. But you know, getting back to Anesthesia as a whole, really, I love not only the classical aspirations it has, but the modern inclinations, the use of that wah early on, that wah.
Yeah. I can't even remember the melody, but like it just does. He does like the 4 notes.
It's the dun 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 dun.
That's it.
Yeah. It's
wah.
And sometimes he'll just go off pissed, almost like a singer warbling, like, you know, the notes, the shapes he casts.
Have you seen? It's not hard to find. There's it's on YouTube now.
Of him live.
Yeah, it's Cliff 'em All. It was just
it's amazing,
mashed together. Like there's like a standalone video of Anesthesia, and it's just like even from the start, he's like doing the little arpeggiated notes, and then in between them, he's just doing like a mad little trill. Yeah. Between all of them, though, it's just obviously going off on one.
Yeah, I've seen that, and you know, Cliff is this absolute genius, which I think it's so good we have this song, because I think maybe other than any other song, arguably Orion as well, but I think, you know, more. I mean, Orion is a masterpiece, obviously, as well. Yeah. But I think Orion's actually a lot better than this song, even though this is great. But I think Orion just is maybe perfection musically. Metallica for me, I think Orion. I think it's exactly what I want from Metallica's music, and you rarely get. And I think
that's a fair comment.
Cliff was, I think in a certain sense, Cliff was central to that. But I mean, you know, Cliff was this genius really. And just to turn back quickly to the book, to the Birth School Metallica book, Dave Mustaine, who is a figure that, you know, I adore, a certain era of Dave Mustaine I adore, kind of late 80s, early 90s Megadeth. You can't get better than that in my eyes. Like, it's so good. But Dave Mustaine here talking in the book, and here it says, Dave Mustaine recalls Cliff being what he describes as a star bass player, before adding that the term alone, star bass player, should tell you something, because bass players are typically the bottom of the rock and roll food chain. Guitar players and singers are at the top, drummers in the middle, bass players at the bottom. I was once quoted as saying playing bass is a step up from playing the kazoo, which certainly pissed off a lot of bass players, but it's essentially true. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, and Cliff was certainly not a glorified kazoo player. He was brilliant. The first time I saw him play, I knew he was something special, and so did Lars and James, which is why they began surreptitiously courting Cliff while Roy McGovney was still in the band. So obviously, you know, Ron McGovney isn't long.
What's this from?
This is from Birth School Metallica. It's really good, isn't it? It's really well written.
See, that's the trouble. It sounds really good, but it also sounds like a child's story, like a children's book.
The story of Cliff. Of Cliff and Ron, but, you know, you know, obviously he was a superstar in a band of superstars. That's kind of what makes crazy for me thinking about Metallica. They all had their strengths, really. Lars was the PR guy to an incredible level. His personality was like nothing else. He knew how to sell the band. James is obviously the genius songwriter back then. Dave was, a sort of pronounced solo player. And to have Cliff involved as well, like, the meeting of the minds.
Do you still listen to a lot of Megadeth?
Yeah.
Because I heard you mention on one of your previous episodes, you like Marty Friedman as well.
Oh, Marty Friedman is God compared to Kirk Hammett.
Yeah, he was one of my favourite guitarists for a long time.
He's his playing style. I've had a playlist on recently of just Rust in Peace, Euthanasia, So Far So Good So What. No, I know he doesn't play on that, but that sort of era. But mostly Rust in Peace and Euthanasia. His solos on some of those songs are so original. It's some of the best, 90s, rock soloing I've heard. It's astonishingly consistent.
For me, as a guitar player, it's quite pivotal point listening to him, with my first job and just sort of listening to them with the, with the head chef just, loving the solos.
Oh, man.
Going home and trying to learn them and shit,
But we're here to talk about Metallica, primarily.
Of course we are.
And Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. I mean, let's talk about the title. I don't know where it comes from. What's your take on the title?
When you first put it out there that you wanted me to do this particular song, I was a bit jealous and a bit sort of I kind of want to talk about one with a bit of story and lyrics.
Sure.
But yeah, I have no idea. I just thought, I just think it's funny, whenever you see him do it live, a couple of videos, you just see James come up and he's like, "You ready to get your teeth pulled?" And that's all you hear from word wise, and then they just start playing it.
Yeah. I mean, it's anything. It's certainly not toothless. I should say. There's some.
It's quite numbing though. So
the sound is kind of, isn't it? Yeah, I suppose I can sort of see where it. Yeah, maybe that's where it comes from. Actually, that's quite interesting. Kind of a groan, almost. Kind of guttural sort of thing there. But yeah, I mean.
Maybe he just named it when he was at the dentist, and he's like, "Fucking hell, I know what I'm going to call that instrumental piece."
Probably, that's what I would say. Probably to that, but yeah, just the whole pull of this song. Really, it is a tale of two cities. We get the sort of longer section, which is more of a conventional solo section, even though he's obviously keeping the rhythm with the drums. For me though. I love the song, entirely as a piece, but the first section, I just find it so interesting to listen to. I love hearing where he goes. I love hearing the range of notes that he picks. It almost feels a little flamboyant, but like we were saying earlier, when you actually sort of engage in it, it's such a moody, moving kind of piece.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I think that's why I'm sort of leaning on the whole idea of maybe they just called it Anesthesia, because it's just him in his zone,
Yeah.
From an earlier reference, maybe sort of thinking about his brother or whatever, practicing just in his own little world. He's just numbed his mind to everything else, and he's just playing bass.
Yeah, I want to hear as well, of course, everyone, what you think of this song. Please comment below, let us know, get us Twitter at MetallicaPod and stuff like that. A book that I've really been enjoying recently by Mick Wall and Malcolm Dome, called Metallica, the Music and the Mayhem. It's kind of like a sort of book version of Alphabetallica in a sense. It has all the songs and like a little review of every song, and the reviews are really good actually. They're really sort of useful to just sort of look at what other people think of Metallica songs, and we seem to be on the same wavelength for a lot of it, and they have quite a good review actually of Anesthesia, which I'll just read here. This is by Malcolm Dome. Getting into the song, he says that a bass solo from Cliff on Kill 'Em All was almost logical, and he made it work, bringing all his style, talent and individually to bear on a rumbling, roaring performance that leaps out of the speakers. Listening back now to this track, one is amazed at how vital and vibrant he sounds, and even when the rest of the band jump into the musical fire with him, he still dominates, leading from the front, a true general amidst a phalanx of foot troops. So, I mean, again, great writing, love, great opinion as well. And, it is that song, isn't it? Like, it's just a wonderful, wonderful experience throughout. And I just love how brazen it is on Kill 'Em All. I love how it's just at the center of this thing. Before it we have Jump in the Fire, after it we have Whiplash, in the middle.
Yes, it is a strange placing for its for its housing in the album.
Mm-hmm. So today we are dealing with Whiplash, which, as I said before, is, an incredibly important song in the lineage of Metallica and, heavy music in general, in my opinion. And I just want to quote quickly, as way of an intro, from Joel McIver's book, And Justice for All the Truth About Metallica, which was quite funny. I don't know if you heard, but Clint on Metal at Your Podcast recently dismissed this book entirely. And I think it's because Joel McIver is very harsh on Load and Reload, refreshingly so. Don't discard the book for all reason with that. It's still quite a valuable tome. And Joel, basically speaking in an early chapter, quote, "One of the things on Kill 'Em All, Whiplash, had a notable effect on many listeners as the most consistently fast song on the record. One such listener was Steve Kirk, vocalist and bassist for Morbid Angel, who reasons, quote, "The term extreme has changed over the years. What was extreme when I first heard it by no means is extreme today, but what really woke me up is when I heard Whiplash for the first time. That was a whole new thing to me when I first heard it. I think I was 12 years old. It made me want to play music. I would listen to a lot of Iron Maiden, which was great at the time, and then I heard Whiplash, and nothing else seemed to compare." Do you agree there, Rob?
I feel like my memory of discovering Whiplash, I mean, I definitely had heard it on Kill 'Em All, but I don't remember actually like hearing it and it blowing my mind. But my memory is more of Live Shit, Binge and Purge, which came out when I was sometime in high school. And just, I mean, the live performance,
Amazing.
I think it was the Mexico City one. I mean, that really stands out. I mean,
Seattle one as well.
It was, I mean, that really stands out to me. And I mean, even if I do get to hear it live, I mean, it really stands out as an awesome thrash song.
Yeah, I mean, this is, a really old song. This is off the first album. This is the first single off the first
Yeah, the first
record.
single.
Yeah, so this is, really ground zero in so many ways for Metallica. And I will say it, unabashedly, unironically, I adore Kill 'Em All. It's not because it's kind of juphenalia and it's kind of rough sounding and whatever. I just think as an artifact of that time of guitar-led adrenaline rock, this is top tier for that kind of 83 sort of stuff. Like this is a classic to me.
I mean, definitely. I mean, what else sound? I mean, I guess you could say the new wave of British heavy metal or whatever. They definitely borrowed from that. But I mean, what else sounded like it in America at the time?
Yeah, and it's the most definitive in terms of, as you said, the new wave of British heavy metal. Because, if you think of this sort of music, what ultimately, if you were to sort of just put everything heavy and distill it, and I know there's going to be some exceptions to this. I'm not saying this is a grand rule, but most metal has chugging, right? It has open string chugging that forms riffs underneath it. Most rock does, lots of blues does. Like, that's just an element of guitar writing. And I think you see in Whiplash maybe the ultimate weaponization of that chugging as a riff. Like, that to me is what makes it stand out ultimately.
Yeah, I mean, it gets you going, and you put it so eloquently. I mean, it is a staple of music before, but after that as well. I mean, even in the Metallica catalog, that open E just chugging along, like it's I don't know, it's groundbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Just in terms of the context, well, before we jump into the criticism ourselves, Lars' interview, there was this great article in Metal Hammer that sort of celebrated the anniversary of Kill 'Em All and went song by song and quoted all the band members. And Lars says, quote, "On Whiplash, we tried to play as fast as we could and have it make as much sense as possible. One of the bands we listened to who were an influence on Whiplash was Venom. That first record, 1981's Welcome to Hell, with songs like Angel Dust and Live Like an Angel, in brackets, Die Like a Devil, was a big inspiration. They took the energy and speed of what Motorhead were doing and made it a little more heavy metal. Motorhead had more of a punkish attitude. Venom need to get name-checked more when people talk about Metallica's early days." Rob, I've got to plead the fifth on Venom. I know they're a big deal in that era, but I've never really listened to them.
Oh, that's a tragedy.
Is that a shame?
No, actually, I don't know if I've heard them either. So no. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, I'll play a quick clip of Venom here. We're not going to appreciate it, but in the future, you guys can listen to a bit of Live Like an Angel, in brackets, Die Like a Devil. And Metallica were taking a lot of, their life on the road and who they were of a band at that time into the debut by having these elements that felt like live pieces. And the intro to me certainly feels like that, opening straight off the bat with the blaster guitar and then the C's parting as the drums march. And it's like a mile wide, right?
Yeah, I love that drum part, that little like rolling, on the toms and the double bass. I mean, it's awesome. It's a sign of things to come.
Yeah, it really is. It has that majesty. It has that, grip on the storytelling of the song. These pregnant silences that are punctuated with that stabbing guitar. And what do you make of the guitar tone on this song and the record in general?
I mean, it's not my favorite. I was introduced to Metallica through Injustice for All. Then I kind of went backwards, and the final one I got out of the old albums was, I think, Kill 'Em All. So I was used to the newer albums at the time. It's fine. I don't dislike it. It's just I prefer the tones of the other albums better. I mean, it's raw. It's their first album. It served its purpose. It just kicks your ass and is in your face. I mean, I have no problems with it.
Yeah, it's front and center, with that chug. And I love the way that the riff changes direction while still maintaining those open notes. So the da-na-na-da-na-na-na-na, like the way it sort of mixes it up to me, I always find quite breathtaking in its breakneck appeal. It's such a groove too as well. And one of the things, Rob, that I love about Kill 'Em All, and it's been said before on the show, I think Alex Finney said it a few years ago, Kill 'Em All in many ways is almost a power trio record, in the sense that the guitar's quite thin and you can really hear the bass and it charges through. What do you make of Cliff on this track?
It actually is nice that you can hear the bass. I mean, it was pointed at, like, I've been listening to it all week, like multiple times a day, and that is a nice feature of this album. That, I mean, I've been listening to Kill 'Em All the way through, and I mean, Cliff is front and center in a lot of these songs, and I mean, it's just so refreshing now. Like, even today, it's I don't know, like Metallica kind of got away from that. It's
absolutely, yeah.
Kind of interesting on the first album that they were able to have that.
It's mad, isn't it? Compare it to Hardwired or Death Magnetic or even the Black Album. Like, the bass was there in Kill 'Em All.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just like to bury Jason Newsted because that's what they like to do. But I mean, even today, like you said, Hardwired, it's not even as front and center unless it's meant for that. It's a bass part and like
some sort of
the bone or something like that.
And another distinctive facet of this album is Hetfield's voice. I always say, throughout the recording of Kill 'Em All, he was permanently going through puberty mid-song, I think. Like, it's mad, his range.
I can't believe that he was able to hit those high notes. It's such a different way of singing. I mean, I think he still hadn't found himself as a front man and wasn't sure which direction he was going to go. Like, maybe I don't know, Merciful Fate, is that the one with the high pitch thing, or I mean, it's so different and so different. I mean, it's so refreshing to hear now when you go back and listen to it. I mean, just those high pitched like screeches. It's pretty funny to hear.
And in terms of the song content, it's fascinating going through with an analytical eye. Throughout the lyrics, you or you've are, directed towards this. So you've come to see the show. You make it real. You need it oh so bad. Like, the song is
it's like a fan letter to the. Yeah. It's a love letter to the fans. It's it's reading through the lyrics. It's corny, with your leather and your spikes and heads are bobbing around. Oh, yeah. It's hot as hell tonight. I mean, they're very basic, but I mean, it's not supposed to be a deep song. It's supposed to be a song that you're banging your head to get in the mosh pit. So I mean, it's awesome. I mean, it's I gotta stop saying it's awesome, but no, it is like a real chugger. It's a real thrash masterpiece.
Yeah, and the melodies and the lyrics, rudimentary they might be, as you say, I think the song is not saved, but certainly bolstered by the fact that there's just a lot of guitar parts going through and a lot of changes and the way they invite the, James screaming for the solo, etc. But just to get back to the lyrics, it really is quite charming in the fact that it's unironic, I guess, for the most part, and now it's taken on maybe a slight wry appeal, even though it's very authentic still, and that's not to downplay what it represents, but the song understands the catch and release of performing to a live audience. So in the choruses and the dun 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 dun, like in the gaps between those chords, such pressure builds up, doesn't it? Like, and it's sort of expelled.
And I mean, live, they lean into it live, with the having the crowd sing with it, and the crowd does whiplash. I mean, it was built for live playing.
Yeah.
It was written for live performances.
Really was, and the martial noise as well. Some brand recognition.
What do you know the story of why they weren't playing or weren't performing with the third verse up until recently? I mean, I couldn't find why they stopped doing the third verse, but they did bring it back in the last tour for whatever reason. Like they just, I don't know, like they weren't performing that verse for some reason for years, and then it was like a big deal. Like, you know, in researching the song, it's like, oh, they with the third verse,
Damn,
it's like,
yeah.
oh wow, like okay, but
That's some Grateful Dead shit right there. Like I appreciate that, but yeah, I don't really understand that. But they do name check themselves in the fourth verse, because we're Metallica. How do you take that line?
I mean, back then it was probably like, we're so badass, we're Metallica, we're gonna kick your ass, like whatever. But now, you know, I'm sure you know, they sing because you're Metallica. You know, they're always, giving thanks to the fans. But I mean, hey, they were young. They were probably like 20 years old when they wrote this. I'm all for it, man.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and it packs so much in, really, because after the two choruses, we get the bridge riff, which is, you know, there's so many riffs on Kill 'Em All, like Metal Militia, where it's just a smattering of notes before yet again another open chug, and it just makes it really interesting and real twisted. Gives way into the solo, which, you know, doesn't necessarily have a shape or a story to tell, but just as a sheer exhibition, through the bend, through the tone as well, and through that raw, primal, youthful, shredding speed, like, it's a bit of a face melter.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too. It's basically in two parts. You know, you have the first part, and then it comes back with whiplash, and then, you know, does the second half of it, which is
it whips
even faster.
Back, yeah.
Or Dick Rash.
It just adds to that wild alacrity of the song, the runaway appeal of it. It just is a staple in their set. It's been played many times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame that Jason he used to sing a verse or two,
course,
back in the day, and now, I mean, I don't think Kirk or Rob can really handle singing a verse.
No,
I never appreciated Jason's backup vocals until he was gone. But yeah, it's amazing how
their voices blended so well. Yeah, ultimate garnish, and you know, an artist in his own right. But even though I love Jason Newsted, I still haven't checked out Newsted, his band.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Metallica fan. Can't say I've ever checked out his new band. I don't know if you said that much.
No, you know, maybe when we're done with the original run, I have to like review Newsted and stuff like that. But this song that Newsted's featured on many times, obviously was written way before he joined the band, debuted October 23rd, 1982 in Fullerton, California. Last played March 4th this year, 2019, in Wichita, Kansas, US. 892 performances total.
That's and it was featured in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, I believe, right, which is probably where you first came in contact with.
I saw that. Yeah, I mean, I have mentioned this before. I didn't really play number 2 that much. Number 2 is quite hated amongst the fan base because I don't know if you're familiar with the games.
No, not really. I just I think I heard you talk about one of the games at one time, and so
actually that's a good idea for an episode. What video games have Metallica been on? Because I'm sure there's been obviously Guitar Hero and stuff like that, but more interesting like soundtracks like that. But yeah, I didn't really play Underground 2, but it's funny you mention that because it's been played on tons of stuff, tons of tribute records. It's on Guitar Hero and Metallica. Apparently, Whiplash was the favorite song of Kurt Cobain.
Yeah,
according to Kirk.
I read that. According to Kirk, yep, I saw that as well. I don't know. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it comes from an article, Metallica's Kirk Hammett on Nirvana's Kurt Cobain, I knew him well. Didn't realise those guys were close.
Maybe they like to party.
He, just following up on the article, apparently he came onto the Seattle show on the Black Album tour. Kirk says, I quote, I remember at one point we were playing Whiplash and he looked at me and kept punching the air with his fist and gave me a big, this just doesn't sound real, Kirk. And gave me
Is that real? Is there footage of this?
Gave me a big thumbs up sign. I was like, cool, Kurt, I know you love this song. This one's for you. And he also says that they spent a good deal of time together. Quote, I knew Kurt kind of well and hung out with him quite a bit. He was a pretty big Metallica fan. I was surprised how much of a Metallica fan he was. He loved Ride the Lightning. He loved that album. So, that's a nice little tidbit that we just discovered on the fly there. But any final thoughts on Whiplash for you, Rob?
No, I mean, it's a barn burner. It's a classic. I mean, set the stage for thrash to come. It's probably I would say my second favorite off of Kill 'Em All, behind Four Horsemen.
But that's a very tough choice. Yeah, anesthesia.
I know. I was looking at Kill 'Em All, and I was like, where would I rank it? And yeah, I have to put Four Horsemen in front of it, sadly. But still amazing song.
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I mention this every time we go through Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All is better than Load and Reload.
You. That's just sad to hear, Tom. I don't understand why you
it
have
achieves its goals so much stronger. Like,
where does it rank next to Saint Anger?
Saint Anger. Oh, I probably like Kill 'Em All more than Saint Anger. Yeah.
Okay, you better say that.
Yeah,
I mean that's fine, but I mean your disdain for Load and Reload is it's upsetting. I mean,
it's never ending. Yeah. I need to let it go, but as always, guys, we go onto the Twitter and we ask what you think of this song, Whiplash. You can follow us at Metallica Pod as always. We like to do these little mini reviews at the end of the episode. And, you know, of course, follow us on the Twitter as well and get in touch with me, metallicapod@gmail.com. So the first comment that we have comes from Kevin Van Dam. Jason doing lead vocals is always awesome. Mark just quotes the song, "We'll never stop, we'll never quit because we're Metallica," and deems that prophetic. Rao says, freaking fresh masterpiece of the first album. Love the song since I first heard it when I listened to Kill 'Em All for the first time. It's a quick build-up and then the song basically punches you in the face as it goes into the main chugging riff. Kirk's in full-on shredder mode while Cliff's awesome bass can be clearly heard in the mix. Hetfield's underdeveloped, somewhat screeching vocal stylings work for this song. Although the lyrics aren't quite up to Injustice for All standards, they serve the song well for what it is, which is basically a thrash metal manifesto. Type to How You says, adrenaline starts to flow, you're thrashing all around, acting like a maniac. It's how you should feel in the pit of the Metallica concert. Metallica brings it. R4 Aaron, which is from the Ridiculous Rock Records podcast. People need to go listen to that. If you like Alphabetallica, you will love that show. Aaron and his guests go through basically the rock canon and beyond. I've been on to discuss 1984 recently. That was a really good episode, Van Halen's 1984. And finally, Dr. Bose says, in terms of Kill 'Em All, I rate the likes of Four Horsemen and Motor Breath higher, but it's a really solid song and it's fun live. I've been lucky enough to see it at half the Metallica gigs I've been to, and no frills thrasher. And Rob, that's Whiplash.
That is Whiplash for you.
I mean, that is, always going to be in the set, I think. No matter where the band play, it's a perennial favourite.
Yeah, that's a good encore. One of their last three songs. It's in the rotation.
Yeah. Really
it's always a treat when you see it live.
Mm-hmm. You know, Phantom Lord, a lot of people will be aware, is essentially a Dave Mustaine song.
I do know that.
He's named in the credits, and it feels like a Mustaine song as well. It feels very much like the way he writes riffs, especially the intro riff, and Killing Is My Business, very reminiscent of a lot of the ideas on here. Actually, he was interviewed on NME a few years ago saying, quote, "I'm not going to give Lars my credit, so I'm not going to be part of it." He was making reference to the, the No Life Till Leather. They were going to do that sort of box set for the tape early on for Kill 'Em All and stuff. He said, "I wrote all of Mechanics, I wrote all of Jump in the Fire, so me giving any percentage of that to Lars, he can pound sand. And as far as the song Phantom Lord, I wrote every note of that music. James wrote all the lyrics. That's 50-50. And it does have some progressive tendencies despite having Mustaine all over it. So we open with those sort of proggy swirls, isn't it? I kind of like that.
Wah thing, yeah. Yeah, it's a bit different from all of the other intros, which I just go right into it.
Yeah.
It has like this, you said it, a proggy little synthy sound, and then it goes to the da-da-da-da-da.
Very, very Am I Evil like that section.
You're right. It is a bit like Am I Evil.
Sort of rolling drums, the stabbing of the chords. It's a little bit desultory. It's slightly anonymous for my taste there. But, whatever. This is the Juvenilia. This is the first record. They're trying new things out. They're getting into different outfits, leather or otherwise. And then we get into the main riff. I mean, that's thrash all over. That's too thrashy for you, or do you like the riff?
No. I did tell you that Injustice for All is my favorite album of all time, not just Metallica. It's definitely my favorite album ever, and that's probably has some more thrashy riffs in it than this one. But maybe not.
Maybe not outwardly. Yeah, it's more prog thrash.
But you can't. For example, you can't really headbang too much to this riff. The one in Phantom Lord. It's too. I don't know. It doesn't speak to me that much. When you listen to, I don't know. Dire Eve is also extremely fast, but you can at least move to it. You can analyze everything a bit more. It's more interesting to me. I still love Phantom Lord. I'm not saying.
And as I say, it's a very Mustaine type riff here. There's really not that much to it. It's a very simple idea which just has a slightly different intro, quite Motorheady, very punk, and you know, with a lot of these early records, like Justice as well, you'd be forgiven for thinking that there's just one guitar here, but I like the sense of two guitar players. I like hearing, you know, okay, it's Kirk here and James rather than James and Dave. I'm always going to think of it as James and Dave. You know, the second guitar with the feedback squall hearing in, and then the pick slide down the fretboard, and then, you know, then we get into it, and you know, Cliff, very visible underneath, isn't he? I forget who said it on the show, but it's such a good point. I think it was Ralph. The band in his early records almost feel like a power trio. Like, you can really hear the bass as an instrument.
Yeah, I can't really remember an instance where I hear the bass in this song, but yeah, I do hear the bass much more in Kill 'Em All than in much of their further albums, definitely. Maybe I do hear it a bit more in Ride the Lightning, but from there on, yeah, probably Kill 'Em All is the bassiest one.
It is, yeah. I mean, it is mimicking the riff to a certain extent, but there are sections, especially in the lead breaks that we'll get onto later, where you know, Cliff is doing some pretty interesting stuff. But you kind of have to listen out for it, and just years of doing this podcast, every time my ears are tuned to Lars, now my ears tuned to Cliff, and you know, it's all over. I try not to tune my ears to James's vocals on this. Kind of questionable for me.
Yeah, well, the vocals on the whole album are really not too that good, and the lyrics are also pretty trash.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just talking about some guy, I think, pillaging like villages and stuff, some sort of superior being or something like that. It isn't really too complex.
No,
there are some like the Four Horsemen, for example, have a bit deeper stuff in it. Yeah, for example. But yeah, most of the album is just thrashing out leather and headbanging.
It is. The taste of leather on your lips is mentioned, and Phantom Lord was actually one of James's early bands. That's where the actual title.
Yeah,
comes
I
from.
did hear about that. Yeah,
and. Yeah, it is a panoply of just tired cliches, sword in hand, falling to the knees, the cry of war. Leathered armies have prevailed, which is quite an image.
Yeah, but I have read that the song is actually about the fan base, about Metallica's fan base talking about how they should, about how they're unstoppable or how they're so grey and you should bow down to them or something like that. Not too sure about that, but that's what I've read about.
And structurally as well, the band aren't trying any of the sophisticated compositions on Justice. You know, the riff exists, and then James, kind of like the solos, is kind of filling in the space in between.
Yeah, the solos in Kill 'Em All aren't really that good either. But well, it does have some exceptions, some good stuff there. There is one song in Kill 'Em All. Well, obviously there's Cliff's solo, that's a standout. But guitar solos, I think the Four Horsemen has a pretty good one. But apart from that, I'm not too sure if I can remember any other memorable ones.
Yeah, Metal Militia's quite a fun one as well, and Jump in the Fire, but they are cut from the same cloth, absolutely, and they're kind of hard to hum out of themselves here. And then, you know, in the problem with Phantom Lord as well, I think the chorus is quite weak. Da 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 da. The melody's quite dirgy, which is being underscored by James's guitar playing. There's nothing anthemic about it or catchy, you know?
Yeah. Except for that, well, I completely love the clean part. Definitely
that part. Yeah.
That part, and that it's probably my favorite part. Well, yeah, my favorite part from the whole album, when he does that acoustic part and then into the chugging.
The chugging's great.
That's really good.
Yeah,
but I'm not too sure. I think it goes back into a solo after that.
It does, yeah. Da-na-na-na. It's kind of like the Seek and Destroy solo, where the riff is just there and then the parts are being played. And when you hear the solo, you almost imagine the rhythm guitars playing it and then the leads just filling in the space. But I don't know if you've seen the live version of this playing this on the 30th anniversary shows with Dave Mustaine.
with Mustaine. Yeah, I have seen it. Yeah,
really cool clip that I'm sure everyone's seen. It's got millions of views. And Dave does all the solos, which is really cool as well. It's baffling to hear Metallica guitar solo plastered in wah as well. It's quite a welcome break. But Dave plays the rhythm and the lead as well. So as soon as he finishes that rhythm part, his hand is striking up the fretboard, and it's a really cool juxtaposition there. And I really like the leads here. They're visceral and exciting in quite an empty, the noodly kind of way.
Well, there is the leads. I can't really picture any lead parts. I just remember in the whole song is just they're both playing the same riff, aren't they? Mm-hmm. I'm not too.
I mean,
sure
the sort of solo parts,
the solo. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
The guitar leads, yeah.
Wait, are there solos? I just realized. Are there solos from? Are they composed by Mustaine or are they composed by Kirk?
Well, I believe Kirk had to follow Mustaine's intros to the solos and write his own middle parts. But just as a Megadeth fan myself, it kind of sounds all like Mustaine's parts, and a lot of Holy Wars is in there as well for that. But yeah, I that middle section though, that arpeggioed section, that shows a lot of nuance and growth on the band's part, doesn't it? I love that realm they enter in the middle of the song.
Well, speaking about Megadeth, I'm also a pretty big fan of them. There was one time in my life when I was juggling in between. Which one is my favorite?
Wow.
I'm not too sure.
We've all been there. Every young man has that choice.
No, I think I'm pretty sure Metallica still.
What's your favorite Megadeth record out of interest?
Ooh, that's really hard one. It depends when you would ask me. Probably if you ask me when I first started listening to them, I would say Rust in Peace, first by far. But then, if I had to listening to one, I would say the best to listen to is Peace Sells. But the best album as an album, it would be Rust in Peace.
Any Euthanasia love?
Oh yeah, I do love Euthanasia, definitely. Probably my fourth favorite of them. Third is their new one, Dystopia, definitely. I think.
Oh yeah,
Dystopia.
I've not really listened to that. Not really listened to the new stuff.
Out of all of the albums I said, probably Dystopia is the one I've listened to most. It has I just love it. It's great. It does have some really bad songs, but out of those bad songs, it has some really, really good ones. For example, there's this song I'm completely obsessed with. It's called Conquer or Die, where it's basically just this long, beautiful solo by Kiko Loureiro, which is their new guitarist, and it's great.
All right. I'm going to add that into the playlist. I'll definitely listen to that. And I mean, just going back to the performances or the anniversary performance, in that chuggy bit at the end of the arpeggio section, which you're right, it's probably my favourite bit as well. It's very simple, but it's very effective.
Yeah.
Dave and James are just kind of standing next to each other, and James is having a ball up there, and Dave just kind of seems in his own bubble somewhat, which plays to their personalities. But clearly they love playing this song and love having him there as well. And then the song kind of returns. The song has that break solo section that we mentioned before. There is some busy Cliff-isms here. We haven't really spoken about Lars, Oliver. What are your thoughts on Lars here? On the song in general?
On this song, as in general, with the whole album, it's not... it's pretty stale. There isn't really... Well, no, there are some parts in the album where there are some different drum fills which are okay, like the intro to Fight Fire with Fire or something like that. But this song in particular, I can't really think of any specific part, apart from that dun 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 dun, where he just hits the toms repeatedly. That's the only part which really stands out to me, and it's extremely simple. So on this song about Lars, I don't really have anything to say, really.
No. And James, again, as I'll always say on Kill 'Em All, sounds like every song he's kind of going through puberty. He just can't control his notes to a certain extent, and some of them jump really high and some of them are really low. And with Sword in Hand to control the land, just that squeakiness comes out.
Yeah.
Where it does work in his favour, and I would say, low-key some of the heaviest Metallica moments occurs at the end of this song. James's kind of screamy throat section.
That end part is pretty good,
Yeah, really cool, isn't it? You don't really hear James ever sing like that.
Yeah, he does have this little squeak at the end, which does... Yeah, you're right. I never really thought about it, but you're right. Yeah, there is this part which isn't really natural for him to sing like that, but it does sound pretty good.
Yeah, And again, to go back to the anniversary show, he tries to kind of replicate that at the end of the song, but he's smiling as he does it because he knows that he can never really hit it, and it sounds kind of goofy to begin with. But as we always do on the show, we reach out to you guys at Metallica Pod, and we got some feedback today on Phantom Lord. Bob O'Rourke says Phantom Lord shreds. The riffing in it is killer, and the lyrics are just the right amount of cartoonish heavy metal imagery to not make it stupid. A bona fide classic off of Kill 'Em All. They should play it more often. Ralph says, love the medieval war imagery throughout. I agree that they should play it more often. I saw it done in person for the first time in Grand Rapids on their last date in the US on the worldwide tour. Ralph also adds that it's an underappreciated and underrated song off the debut. Fast and heavy, face-melting thrasher from the boys here. Hammett does some quick shred-tastic lead work on this one. Always loved how high Cliff's bass is up in the mix on the entire album. Quite a treat to see live. Abel says the most forgettable song off of Kill 'Em All. Still pretty cool nonetheless. Killer main riff and the ending scream is pretty epic. Yeah, absolutely is. And finally, Sabra saying, very punky. Sounds like a leftover Motorhead track. Any final thoughts on the track for you?
Well, I disagree a bit on some of the things they said.
Yeah.
Like, I think there are some songs which are much, much less memorable than this one on Kill 'Em All.
So what would you say, like No Remorse, Metal Militia?
No Remorse probably is the most forgettable one for me.
Yeah, I would say so as well, yeah.
Well, that one and probably... probably just No Remorse is by far the worst.
No, I mean, like, it's a 10-song album, so it's hard to pick, but yeah. Most people that I found pick No Remorse and Metal Militia as being the two. But yeah, No Remorse is probably
not Metal Militia. I actually do enjoy Metal Militia.
Yeah, Metal Militia is exciting as fuck. Like, yeah, I really like Metal Militia.
Yeah.
And just before we get into the song today, very cool. You head up the Midwest Militia, the Met Club chapter.
Yeah, I did for a bit, and that actually switched over to Lords of Sumner once I moved to the Nashville area. Right. But Midwest Militia, I still kind of had my fingers in for a little while back when I lived in Columbus, Ohio, which is their capital, kind of central Ohio there. Because I'm an Ohio guy from the get-go. But, I moved around a little bit and, tried to be involved as much as you can as a fan on the Metallica side of things.
Getting into No Remorse then, I mean, listening to this song is, very much like dipping back at a moment in time. It's very of its era, of its murder in the front row kind of aesthetic, just kind of classic thrash, a form that Metallica were already kind of mastering. I mean, what do you make of this style of music in general? I mean, you mentioned Pantera before. Do you have an appreciation for this kind of older stuff? Or?
Right. I think it's just the rawness of it. It's I think the lack of planning sometimes that goes into Metallica's music sometimes gives you some of their best stuff. No Remorse, is it the greatest song on Kill 'Em All? No, I mean, but it falls kind of in line with kind of the bigger songs on that album. I mean, there's breakdowns in the song that kind of reminisce of certain parts in Seek and Destroy and things like that. But, if Metallica now created this song, it probably wouldn't be far off base with some of the stuff that you even hear on Hardwired. So, I like No Remorse. It's, probably one of my top 4 or 5 on Seek and Destroy. So, it's a good listen for me.
I mean, would you agree it's slightly a black sheep in terms of the track listing? It's not one that gets mentioned as much.
I would totally agree with that. But, since so much time has passed, that's one of those songs that, I think anyone would consider a treat if they put it on their set list these days, But, it's definitely not one of the more popular talked about ones on that album for sure.
No, I mean, it is quite long, and I think even if they trimmed it, the kind of the vital parts of the song don't quite measure up personally for me against a Hit the Lights or a Motor Breath or even a Jump in the Fire. But yeah, I still really dig the track opening with that trudgy, baggy riff that's still quite tight, kind of gnashing jaws of it, and then a very long guitar solo opening up.
Right, that's... to me, I mean, it's not a bad solo on Kirk's part. I mean, it's kind of, you can tell the pressure was on him. That's kind of his point and really trying to acclimate himself to being a band member there, whether he was actually asked to be in it or not. But, you can tell it's that pressure and probably, fresh off seeking the advice of Joe Satriani the pressure was on him, and I think Kirk performs better whenever he's kind of in that state of mind, for me anyway.
Yeah, it's very much a mark of the era compositionally. I mean, the intro guitar solo isn't anything new as kind of a mood setter. I mean, think of like Out to Get Me by Guns N' Roses, for example, has quite a bombastic solo early on. But this is just very long, and there's some impressive theatrics and dive bombs, etc. It's not just a singular line, it's kind of an elongated piece, which feels more acclimatized to maybe in the climax of the song, not the intro. It's an kill 'em all ambush, as they always are, kind of descends down and resolves back into the riff that's been underneath it. So it is quite drawn out. Amongst it all, it does have a pretty wild energy, and Cliff is audible as he always is, kind of casting these humpy shapes rhythmically underneath. I can't say enough for the sound of the instruments on this record. I just find it quite nourishing.
Yeah, it's it's listening at it, audibly, it's a gem, so to speak. Kirk was definitely, I think, hitting some of his high points, maybe what you would see from him a little bit later on over the next couple albums there. And, coming into their own and just wanting to be in your face, I think this song kind of personifies, what was really to come from some of their more not headlining tracks and albums to come. So it's kind of it was refreshing for me whenever I first heard this song, so many years ago. And it's always been one that's not been a track skipper for me.
No, and one of the things people might point to as being an artifact of that juvenilia is Hetfield's voice. It's quite high pitched at parts. It breaks. It's not in his command like it will be on subsequent records. Also, it's not recorded very well either. So it makes slightly tricky listening maybe without the lyric sheet early on. But what do you make of his performance and the sound of it on this song?
It's kind of that classic Kill 'Em All Hetfield. As you've seen them get later on, say once you get into the Black Album era, I mean, these songs just pop a lot more once he kind of got better vocally. But you appreciate the youthful energy he has here, and that it's just a staple in that album. I mean, he just kind of, you can tell he's given it absolutely everything that he can possibly give it on the vocal side. And, sometimes that sounds good. Sometimes it doesn't with the way it kind of makes the changes in his voice and whatnot. But, not bad. Definitely not his best work for sure.
No, it is a little screechy in parts, and they employ some of the tactics that had worked early on in the album, such as Hit the Lights, where, again, here the chorus has a different rhythm. As we're led into that War Without End, it kind of has a jerky, dancey rhythm that plays with things. There's just lots of things that they're employing, I think, that make it such a vital listen. It still, as I say, is recorded brilliantly, but I just think some of it seems like there's lots of riffs thrown together, I suppose. Like, there is a lot here that they're kind of stapling on top of each other that still really complement, and there's still so many good riffs like that, which again, that figure we've heard in millions of riffs before and since, but it's still pretty energetic.
Yeah, I agree. And once they actually got themselves dialed in, and later on in their careers, you kind of felt some more of that at a little bit more organized way whenever an album like Death Magnetic comes along. So I kind of feel like these two albums to me are a little bit intertwined in kind of the energy they tried to bring, and it's very evident on both. But Kill 'Em All, it's where it's first started. Those are one of the first few albums I cut my teeth on, and I'll always love it. It's just one of them that kind of just grew my interest in Metallica, and this song particularly for me was one that grabbed a hold of me pretty early.
Yeah, there's such experimentation in the form. There are all these riffs that we've come to expect from the acolytes of Diamond Head, etc. But then in the center of the song, we get some like Tom Morello like scratching before another familiar riff, and then the solo on top, big quite bluesy solo, all with sort of Mixolydian stings in their tail, establishing these repetitive shapes that kind of climb to and fro and whatever, and eventually building to a 24 fret strangle as they always do. But there's some like prog proggy moments as well at 3 minutes 50. That's kind of a flurry of notes. I don't really know how to better describe it, but it really stands out to me as quite progressive, and I don't know if Cliff vied for that or whatever, but I think it's really, really cool, and it just sort of shows you again, a signal to where they were heading. Really, really enjoy that. It is a long song, and verses and choruses come and go, and it is, I think it's like the third longest song on here, and Kirk's solo again isn't too mind-blowing, but it ends grandly as well. It ends with like a sort of false ending with the drums, very Call of Cthulhu-esque.
Yeah, kind of it stops and gives you that false ending right whenever you're like, hey, I really want more to this song, even though it is as long as it is, and they kind of have a little short into it there afterwards, but it's a good build up for somebody who's really kind of interested in that particular album of Metallica. I mean, this song kind of personifies everything that I thought about it. Just once you're done listening to the album itself, much like No Remorse, you just kind of like, I could take a little bit more of that,
Yeah.
But just a lot of energy, and they're, again, it's kind of a precursor to a lot of their songs that they've kind of based on war and things like that. That Hetfield really got into that writing style back in those days, and it's just definitely a precursor of where they were headed for sure.
Yeah, it's a sheer exhibition of speed and thrash accomplishment. Already on the debut, I think it's a marvelous display of technique. It isn't as addictive for me, but I do, again, like with every song pretty much, apart from the songs off Load and Reload that we do on this show, I grow more closer to understanding and gain appreciation for by doing the research, and Kill 'Em All is one of my favorite Metallica records, and No Remorse is certainly an enjoyable romp. 231 times it's been played, so a lot of times. It was debuted August 4th, 1982, West Hollywood, California. Most recently played about 3 months ago, December 5th, 2018, in Portland, Oregon. I mean, so good that the band play these songs from their first album, and they go down a storm.
Yeah, and like I said before, it's such a treat when you get to hear this. I think one of the tours I saw it on, probably in the mid to late 90s, I think they're playing at Ohio State University, their football stadium there. And I want to say they played No Remorse then, and it was just, mind-blowing, because that time they were still kind of pushing all the Load and Reload stuff out, and they were kind of fresh off that. So for me, that was a treat, even though some ears were there to hear the newer stuff. But I'm kind of an old head when it comes to that, so I can remember one of those shows there in Ohio that I really enjoyed, them kind of breaking that one out.
And as we always do at Metallica Pod, we're open to feedback on there, your thoughts on the song in a brief tweet or two. We've got a few here on the Twitter. This one comes from Jason Wood. He says, raw and wide open, no guessing with this song, a raging new wave of British heavy metal tribute with snarl and light. Sabra Gab is saying underrated. Sabbath Bloody Podcast, go follow them, the best and I think only Black Sabbath podcast out there. Shout out Rye. Says No Remorse is rad. Opening riff is an onslaught, and I love the way Cliff punches the riff changes and catches all kinds of magic in the interlude. Ralph Funny saying another Kill 'Em All thrash classic, doesn't get quite enough love these days, especially live. Lyrics around unrelenting, merciless army destroying all comers were a bit juvenile, but still have their charm. James's blood-curdling scream of attack towards the end is just phenomenal. What about yourself, Phil? Any closing thoughts on this song?
No, other than I can just kind of reiterate the comments you were getting from Twitter and social media. I totally agree with all that. That would be anything that I would add to the song. They kind of encompass that in those comments there, and it's one that it's not in my top 10 songs, but it's one that I would never skip, and I always get so much enjoyment out of listening to it.
Getting to Seek and Destroy, then, it's easy to be swept away in the legacy, being in awe of this track that's been played over 1,500 times live. Right. It is one of their defining numbers. But if we're approaching it just compositionally, just the song in of itself, hermetically sealed, that opening riff, do you play guitar yourself?
I do, yeah. I started playing guitar as a teenager, and I'm currently playing bass. So I kind of abandoned the guitar.
And the riff itself anchored on that A string, and the way the 7/8 comes in, just the shape of it is quite unusual, but quite intuitive, quite earthy on the fretboard. And ding 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 ding. You know, it is a very earwormy, kind of menacing assault.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that the song is a mid-tempo. It's kind of it's good. I mean, obviously, a lot of it is kind of maybe borrowed from Diamond Heads. There are two songs that usually cited. I think "Sucking My Love" is
track, right?
Yeah, I mean, "Sucking My Love" is the opening riff, and then "Dead Reckoning" is the other song where they maybe stole the verse riff a little bit. Not stole, but maybe got inspired.
Yeah. And there is that Saxon song as well that I said that basically the solo, the now, and then the lead part filling in the gap, which to me again feels quite in that vein. And I think "Stolen's" maybe the wrong term. "Inspired" homage is a better one, but they use that a lot. Metallica and a lot of other thrash bands use that. But the song has this kind of almost adorable simplicity when you think about it, when you play it. There's very little involved. It's very this opening riff with the descending ending or whatever. I know I'm sort of describing every riff ever there, but there is something in it that's almost naive that just absolutely works. Puts a definitive stamp on this sort of minimal anthemic thrash. And throughout, like so many Metallica songs do this. This is why they're such a fucking incredible band. Not a lot of bands can even really do this. Guns N' Roses is another band that can. Pile on the great riffs, one after another, into a cohesive whole. And, this opening 90 seconds or so of Seek, the way the riff turns, the way it slows even, further down, I just can't get enough of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it takes a lot of self-confidence to play something simple. Because a mistake that many aspiring bands do is they try to play something complex that is sometimes above and beyond their abilities. But playing something simple and making it sound good, it's really precious.
The bouncing bass of Cliff is very noticeable in the intro of the track.
Yeah, this whole album, by the way, if I have to say something really good about Kill 'Em All, I think in terms of how the bass stands in the mix is probably my favorite. Because after that, for some reason, Metallica chose to kind of bury the bass. We know the story with Injustice and so forth. But here, and I know the story of the recording is that the band was kept away from the mixing process, which, as far as I'm concerned, works well, especially for the bass.
Yeah, it was like the bass wasn't even buried on Justice first. Like, it doesn't pop like it does on here. I think someone on the show before mentioned that Kill 'Em All's almost like a power trio record because you can just hear that bass there. It's not just following the riff. It's this kind of, it's almost dissonant, the note, because it really does stick out quite sorely and works really in the favour of just propelling this thing forward, because it's all about momentum and adrenaline, isn't it? There's nothing deep or poignant about a Seek and Destroy. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I think it's the opposite of deep, actually, especially the lyrics. It's probably the shallowest lyrics, or maybe it's tongue in cheek or something, but they're very I don't know. Primitive.
And it's a song that doesn't die. Like, it's a song that you think ends and has lots of kind of false stops and starts and just returns to its dominance, to seeking and destroying,
Yeah, almost 7 minutes. That middle part with the solo, it sounds so much like Dave Mustaine. I know he doesn't have a credit, but it really sounds like him.
Sounds a lot like the Phantom Lord breaks, and just sounds a lot like him in general, and that sort of scene, like Chris Poland as well of Megadeth. They kind of have that, I don't know, it's hard to explain, almost like running water there, legato. Like, it doesn't even sound real, like, just the speed of it and the kind of the slippery nature. And do enjoy the playing on here. Like, okay, it's a call and response sort of thing, and Kirk's leads are aggressive in their speed and shred-tastic to a certain extent, but it's not like, I've been listening to some Dokken, I'm always kind of enjoying Dokken every now and then, and George Lynch, I just think he's a phenomenal player, and he kind of does a lot of similar stuff where I'll just sort of play lots of notes and just hope for the best in between jumps. And Kirk stuff is bad. What I prefer in terms of the speed in the song is the I guess you call it the bridge of the like again that is on rails. You can kind of see where it's going, but still so absorbing. Like I listened to this song not 10-15 minutes ago, and it still works. Love it.
Yeah. And by the way, I discovered a Raven song entitled "Seek and Destroy," but
interesting.
It doesn't sound anything like Metallica. But
I mean, I mean, "Ride the Lightning" is from Diamond Head album title, so who knows? Yeah. They could have got that directly. I mean, this song. I mean, this is kind of a weird stat on this song, but it was one of the songs that was placed on the post 9/11 inappropriate titles list. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No, I'm not. But I always made parallels with "Search and Destroy" by the Stooges.
Yes,
which is a great song with great lyrics.
Yeah, and the Princess of the Night is that Saxon song, by the way. The three mini solos kind of ape there with their structure. And Lars always said in '93, if Seek and Destroy is borrowed from any Diamond Head song, it's Dead Reckoning. It's greatly inspired Seek and Destroy, shall we say?
Yeah.
And on the Black Album tour, on average, this 7-minute song, it became like between 16 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think Jason was singing it most of the times.
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, I can't say I don't get bored listening to the Binge and Purge version, but...
Yeah, me too. I mean, it's probably nice live, but to just sit through it 18 minutes, it gets boring.
I have distinct memories, actually, of me and my friend Ryan, who's been on here for Battery, must have been playing like Gears of War on the Xbox or something like that, and listening to this in the background, and he just kept going on and on and on, and it was just... there's a lot of haze from Jason, let's say that much, and a lot of the main riff there, but still, it just... it serves its purpose. It makes sense as a song that could go that far. I don't think Here Comes Revenge could be stretched out to 20 minutes. Been played a hell of a lot, pretty much mostly as the closer. I mean, on the most recent tour that I saw the boys on in Birmingham, October 30th, 2017. This is the third song, I believe. So what do you make of it in terms of its live positioning?
Well, it's really amazing that the longevity of the song is amazing. Although I do find it a bit dated nowadays, course, but it's such a classic that it's really hard to say that, because it's kind of it created a space of its own, and it's even when you try to compare it, where they took the riffs from, there are so many songs that borrowed from Seek and Destroy that it's at this point it's such a kind of standard that it's really difficult to kind of judge it objectively. But even in my newsfeed today, I think from Metal Success, one of those sites, there was recent news that Metallica played Seek and Destroy with some 13-year-old boy. Was it in Holland or something?
Oh, I saw the thumbnail. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's such an iconic song. I think that they will always play it. I mean, I doubt they will ever have a gig without playing Seek and Destroy.
No, and it's one of those entry-level songs. Like I mentioned before on the show, I used to have this thing called Guitar Club at my old secondary school with our biology teacher, Mr. Hughes, and every Friday, there were like 5 or 6 of the guitar-playing kids, whatever, would gather together and jam and stuff. And Seek and Destroy would be one of those songs just everyone would know. Or if you didn't know it, you would learn it in seconds. Like, it just has that irresistible quality to it, but it still retains that appeal. Let's see what you guys thought on the Twitter at Metallica Pod. As I said before, we always welcome your opinions on the songs. Sabbath Bloody Podcast saying a standout on their debut, undeniably anthemic and uniquely Metallica. What? It's a Diamond Head ripoff? Well, it's still awesome. So, I mean, there are some liberties taken. Nick Makovic has a good Saxon cover, another Barb there. Phil saying one of their best early songs, signature Metallica with an intro riff that every teenager tried to play on their first new guitar, a live staple which never fails to energize the crowd. Matt Jameson saying way too long live, which I do understand. The Deep Purple podcast, shout out to those guys. Love the riff on this one, early Metallica at its best. And Fix is saying my favourite Metallica song to play on guitar, an absolute classic. I mean, unsurprising, the reaction there, Yvonne.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm really happy that Metallica matured after Seek and Destroy, to be honest, because I'll be worried for people that cite Seek and Destroy as their favorite song. because I mean that's probably that subsection of the fans that used to send death threats to Lou Reed, for example.
Yeah. Go listen to Junior Dad, you assholes! Like, you know, reappraise. Where do you stand out of interest? Reload or Kill 'Em All?
Kill 'Em All.
Yeah,
any day. Yeah. I mean, the first 4 albums, maybe the first 5.
Of course.
Yeah. Those are just, precious.
Yeah, and I do really, really still enjoy this song. A lot of Kill 'Em All I enjoy a lot more than this track. Part of it is it's kind of, it gets a little bit tiresome at points, and I think so much of Kill 'Em All is so, run and gun, as it were. I mean, this song is fucking everywhere. I wasn't even aware of this, but apparently this song is used like one of the songs in sports, like one of the marquee songs. Sting, the wrestler, the San Jose Sharks apparently have Seek and Destroy as their entrance theme. Many of the band members are Sharks fans. Pittsburgh Penguins, lots of other weirdly titled teams there. They replaced the Outfield's Your Love, which I love as well. It's a great song. Lots of bands have covered it. It's ubiquitous in this ecosphere, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, I don't know, it's like Smoke on the Water or something.
Yeah. I mean, talk about the song for you then. Like, I mean, a defining song of your youth.
Yeah, I mean, it's again that's the song that got me into Metallica. Mm-hmm. It's so catchy. Today, just looking back, I probably wouldn't place it in my top 50 Metallica songs, but it served its purpose. I mean, it's a gateway song into Metallica, I would say.
It was, as we said before, it was performed 1,554 times as of us recording this on June 12th, 2019. It was most recently performed yesterday in Amsterdam and first performed July 3rd, 1982 in Costa Mesa, California. It's going to be on every show ever, right?
And I think in terms of time elapsed, it's the most played, for sure.
Yeah, hell yeah. Absolutely, yeah. It is an endearing classic. Let us know what you think of Seek and Destroy down below. Email me, metallicapod@gmail.com. If you want to come on the show as well, at metallicapod on Twitter. Any closing thoughts on Seek and Destroy?
I don't know. We didn't get into the lyrics, but again, I don't find them particularly.
Yeah. We'll cut. Yeah, sorry. Good point. I'll cut the lyrics. So I'll just cut this. So just finally, then, I mean, the lyrics. Got to get onto the lyrics as well. Like, what do you make of these?
I mean, it's almost like sounds like violence for the sake of violence, for the fun of it, sure. Which is, I guess, that was part of the vibe in the early Bay Area thrash, like Murder on the Front Row and all that. Maybe there's a glimmer of some kind of reasoning in one of the lines. You always been taking and now you're given. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's anything. Directed towards something, or just a general kind of objectifier. But it's I always think it's just a bit of a brainless, gratuitous violence centered song in terms of the lyrical content.
Dying 1,000 deaths. Bloody
ambitious.
Yeah. The searching, the space those chords leave. I mean, again, that's testament to the simplicity, the beautiful simplicity of this track. Like, if you play, that's literally just 3 chords. That's up and down. That's nothing. That is just perfect. And
there's so many songs that follow that structure. Yeah. Those descending.
Oh my god! Everything. And this is the history of this track as well. Hetfield was actually interviewed and said, were you conscious that you're writing a song you've been playing 35 years? He said, without sounding too full of... Oh, sorry. Let me just re-record it. So Lars was just interviewed on Metal Hammer, and he was asked, were you conscious that you were writing a song in Seek and Destroy that you'd be playing for 35 years? He said, absolutely not. We weren't conscious, full stop. Without sounding too full of ourselves, we always treated the songs as equals. We felt that the song before Seek and Destroy and the song after it were just as good, and the one thing we didn't have then was a lot of songs to choose from. They weren't 7 leftover songs for Ride the Lightning. Every single song that we've written, you've heard. So how do you write this on your first album? How do you do it?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think Kill 'Em All is one of the best debut albums. All time, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. I'll put it right there with maybe Rage Against the Machine's debut.
Wow, that's an incredible debut. Pearl Jam?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. Pearl Jam 10 is my favorite. Many people would disagree, but it's still my favorite.
Okay. I'm sorry, snobby Pearl Jam fans. No Code isn't better than 10. It's just not. Like, I don't really know what albums you're listening to. Like, people are like, oh, Red Mosquitoes, like this really deep. I'm like, no, I don't know. It doesn't do it for me. But yeah, I agree. I think 10's almost underrated, even though it's completely overrated. I would say Soundgarden, but their debut wasn't great. Screaming
No, the
Life.
first few. Yeah, the first few records are you can see how they're still trying to find their sound. I think anything before Louder Than Love is a bit immature with Soundgarden.
For me personally, just to go on a quick tangent, like the era that I've really been exploring is like SST records, like Greg Ginn's Black Flag label, and a lot of kind of grungy antecedents like Wipers, and also Meat Puppets are an absolutely extraordinary band. Like, seriously quickly becoming one of my favourite bands that I've recently got into. Like, you know, their early records, their second record is sublime. But, I mean, Seek and Destroy, just closing up then, any final thoughts on the track?
No, I think we covered it. I mean, it's such an iconic song. I don't know what else to say. It just speaks for itself.
And, you know, something like Kill 'Em All then, so we're getting on to today's closing track being Metal Militia. Like, where do you rank Kill 'Em All?
Even on that album, I'd say that's kind of like a middle of the pack kind of song for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's a nice kind of fast, thrashy way to end the album. The lyrics are, you know, not as mature as some of the other stuff James has written, but for, you know, being, what was he, like 19 or something like that, they're pretty good.
There's a lot of the raw components there that I think makes the song successful. It opens a bit like the opener, Hit the Lights, with kind of a pause of theatrical grandiosity into the main riff, which is very Fight Fire with Fire-esque, that kind of machine gun rhythm. I don't know about you, but when I first heard it, and, you know, I can definitely see it that way, it feels quite primitive, the riff, certainly in comparison to, like, the Justice stuff you mentioned before. But it's pretty irresistible the more you listen to it.
Oh, yeah. It's a very, very catchy killer riff.
Yeah. Just, an assault, really, into the second riff, which is very much like, you know, Seek and Destroy, that sort of Diamond Head interlude. It's something instantly immortal, the da-na-na-na-na-na, you know, it just comes in like this wailing siren, and Cliff joining in underneath, doing his own thing around the song. Like, it's breathless for me, this intro. I think it's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I think I know Mustaine has a credit on this song, as well as, 3 other songs on here.
Yeah.
And I can definitely hear his influence on it. You know, because he kind of goes out and it's like wants to rip your face off right away.
Yeah. Because they played this song live, obviously, many, many times, but they did it at the anniversary shows, the 30th anniversary shows in 2011, with Mustaine playing this song, actually.
Yep. Yeah, they certainly did. I think it seems like they kind of don't play it as much anymore. It used to be a staple, like way back in the day, but I haven't heard. I've actually never heard it live, and I think I've seen them about 9 times now. So I've heard a lot of other songs, but not this one.
Yeah, it seems to have been around. I watched a few live versions of it. They were at like Amoeba Record Store Day, I think in 2016, and they did that. But I think they did it on the Hardwired tour as well. But you are right, it is more of a rarity now. And James's voice we have to talk about, as always with Kill 'Em All. Very odd, very, like, doesn't kind of make sense. Like, it'll start high and go low, or it'll just kind of waver in and out. And with the production on the voice itself, as well as the delivery, it's kind of a double whammy, isn't it? It's quite disorientating.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It's, like you said, he kind of goes back and forth between the high, screechy kind of thing and the low, guttural type of thing. Kind of, well, still trying to get a feel for how to sing, really.
Yeah, definitely. How to be a front man, how to project, how to lead.
Right.
I mean, it's still charming and effective, and it's funny in the live editions, and I've seen a lot of the comments mention this as well. You know, James will stick to the higher interpretations. He won't kind of Hetfieldize it. He won't kind of, you know, bring that later maturity into it. He'll be quite faithful to it, and that is part of the appeal. He's barking, he's yapping. Quite a simple chorus as well, just Metal Militia with the open E in between.
Yeah, oh yeah, very simple.
We're a long way away from sort of the Bob Rock compositional structures here. It's just barking out the song title, but that's what it needs. And it is the closing song on Kill 'Em All. I don't know if it feels like a sort of classic closing song to me. It just kind of ends on a, relentless aggression note.
Yeah, you know what? For a long time, the copy that I had, it wasn't actually the closer, because I think Elektra took Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg and threw them on at the end when they put the album out. So when I purchased the remastered version, it's just those 10 songs and that's it. So for decades, that wasn't really the closer for me.
Yeah, in today's streaming world as well, that's kind of slightly irrelevant, I appreciate, but it's just interesting themselves that they staged it there. And, as you mentioned before, it is kind of a middle-of-the-pack song, I would say. That's quite fair on Kill 'Em All. I personally actually really love Kill 'Em All. It's definitely been a revelation for me doing this podcast, just how much I've grown to adore this style of music, this, moment in history, but also just this playing from the guys. And I think stuff like Jump in the Fire that we covered before on the show, Anesthesia, Hit the Lights, Four Horsemen, anything we haven't covered as well, I have really enjoyed. But yeah, back into Metal Militia, we have Kirk here with the solo, and like the bass, which we'll get to, the song pulls away, Ralph, and we get sort of a little lead from Kirk and then into the solo itself.
Yeah, I've heard this solo on the No Life Till Leather version, which is Dave Mustaine's solo.
Yeah.
And I'd say Kirk's version, he kind of started in a similar way and then took it somewhere else, which seemed like somewhere better to me. It seems like a much better solo than the No Life Till Leather version.
Yeah, I agree, actually. I don't think Mustaine was much of a lead player. Technically he was great, but...
Yeah, he's a great technical player, but I don't know about his leads. They're kind of... I don't know, they're kind of sloppy, maybe all over the place.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They're kind of jerky. They're kind of spasmodic. Yeah. They're sort of
kind of the way he was then.
Yeah. I think his leads are a fair representation of his personality.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think he knows how to start a solo absolutely, and he does create those riffs, as you say before, in this song, and Phantom Lord and stuff like that. Real jackhammers. Right. Yeah, Kirk's lead, it has that sort of break there into a. It's a fine sort of solo from him. It's really of the time. Again, he was very young. Like we're saying, James is very young vocally. I think it does what it needs to do. This sort of genre of music was still approaching that, ardent virtuosity that he and all the fellow peers would accommodate. One of the things I really like as well about this song is, as well as Kirk's pullout, as I say, is the bass pullout. It reminds me a little bit of No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age, but I love that we just get a bit of Cliff down below.
Yeah, you know what? Especially on the remastered version, it seems like they pulled the bass and the bass drum way up in the mix, where it was lower before, and you don't really. To me, on this album, you hear Cliff's bass more than either Ride or Master of Puppets, honestly. I kind of like it.
I completely agree from listening to it. And there are times, when the main riff is played, that, there's a really awesome playing by Cliff that isn't just the root notes. He's sort of bubbling underneath and just, I don't know, he's just quite frantic there, and he just really helps to etch out the song even more so. The drop, going back to him, initiates the kind of next movement of the song as well. And yeah, you cannot hear him as well on the second or third album, certainly not. It does almost give it this sort of almost trio feel where the bass is kind of, a proper instrument, really taking notice of that. What do you think about Cliff overall in this song?
Oh, and this I think is great. I think he's great all over this album. Yeah. I mean, he's great, period, but
he was.
I mean, his stuff really comes out. It's really noticeable, more on Kill 'Em All than any other album, really.
Yeah, obviously on later albums, he had the songwriting print as well. Orion most notably. But yeah, no, I think from Day Dark Light, they all were gifted instrumentalists. And James, vocally, maybe needed a little bit of work, sounding quite aggrieved at times, quite strained, and we as listeners have to sort of strain to hear him as well. The chorus repeats as we lead our way out of this song, which, is 5 minutes 10. One of the longer songs on Kill 'Em All, not up there with the 6 and 7 minutes, obviously, but still one of the longest. The 10th song closing the album, and then we have the sound effects. How do you interpret the marching?
Almost like the band marching off to war to conquer the world or something like that.
It's an interesting thing, it's a thing we get in a few Metallica songs. The sound effect, where we do have this sort of military march going forward. It's not clear if this is marking the end of the album, or I say they're marching away, or the Kill 'Em All hypothesis is being achieved. I'm not sure, but still pretty evocative, and it does create an ending as Hit the Lights. It's kind of live intro created a start, and I don't mind it. But anything else to say on Metal Militia, Ralph?
No, I don't think so. Other than in the version that I used to have, they used to have "Am I Evil" right after that.
Yeah.
So the marching off to war thing, and then the kind of martial drums at the beginning of "Am I Evil" kind of made sense together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. That sort of sequencing, you can't really, obviously, well, that was on a printed release, but like the power of it, I don't think can be underestimated. It's been played 86 times, Metal Militia. It was first played on March 27th, 1982. That was in West Hollywood, Cali. Most recently performed April 16th, 2016 in Berkeley, California. So yeah, it's been played a fair few times, but as you say, most often early, I should say, on Cliff 'Em All as well as a few other releases. But I wouldn't say it is one of the songs that I really, really do rate off Kill 'Em All, ultimately. I think it is a kind of middling track. In some ways, it's just not as catchy or as memorable, I suppose, for some people, but still, I think it's an incredible showcase of the band, and I still really, really do enjoy it as a song, as I do enjoy a lot of Kill 'Em All. And let us know down below what you think of Metal Militia at MetallicaPod. Get in touch with MetallicaPod@gmail.com as well. Let us know in the comments.